Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Glad to have you with us, as is always the case. Should be a fun show today. We've got Gordy Chiesa. LeBron James will not be rushed. Don't try to rush him. Don't try to force it. Don't boss around King James. Sammy Moore is going to swing by. We'll talk a little Utah football as they are just days away from opening fall camp here in Morgan Scalley's first go as the head coach. And Amy Hogue, member of the 1991 women's softball team that is being inducted into the Utah Athletics Hall of Fame. We'll talk a little bit with Amy Hogue in our 1 o'clock hour. James Peterson is behind the glass, as is always the case, or at least we try to make sure it's always the case here. And we've got a lot to talk about as SEC Media Days continue, and the SEC likes to be the thought shapers and the trend makers in college football, and they're hilariously watching that status sort of slip between their fingers because the Big Ten is now the most powerful conference in college athletics. And the panic reaction / reaction has been very interesting to observe because, look, we've been here before. We know what this feels like. University of Utah football fans watch the Pac-12 go from being this, like, heritage, powerful, incredible brand to being nothing to hopefully this year being some like mere shadow of its former self. But it's a slippery slope in college athletics. It's a terrible time for some people. It's a great time for others. It's a neutral / scary time, I think, for teams in the Big 12 conference where there's reasons for optimism, but there's probably also reasons for fear. The SEC is actually, they don't know how good they have it. Probably, because it can always be a lot worse. It can always be a lot scarier. It can always be a lot more difficult. Somewhere George Kliavkov is trying some like new brand. He started his own company, right? And he's watching Greg Sankey sound bites come out on ESPN and having a little chuckle to himself like, this guy has no idea how scary it is. This guy has no idea what it's like to watch the conference beneath you crumble and for everyone to blame you for it. It's not going to happen to the SEC. The SEC is not in anywhere near danger of collapsing or really of even losing its status. I mean, the status that it already lost was number one conference in college football, but it's not like it's not reattainable for the SEC. If the SEC wins a couple more recruiting battles and wins a national championship this year, then they climb back onto the top of the heap for bragging rights. They get the phone calls. They get the number one billing on all these networks that right now are trying to flip a coin and decide whether they're going to talk more about Michigan and Ohio State or Alabama and Georgia, right? It's not bad in the SEC, but they're kind of like, I don't know. We did our PFL event this past weekend on the campus of University of Texas. It was at the Moody Center where the basketball team plays. That arena is nicer than the Delta Center. It's not bigger. It's not as big. But when you walk like in the bowels of that thing, like the stuff that's not even public facing, right? It's the tunnels between locker rooms where the workers are, where the student athletes and the coaches are. Every single bell and whistle is there. On a college campus. It was absurd. Like they have, how people have that jellyfish lighting or whatever it's called. I know there's a bunch of different brands, but they put it on. They put
the permanent
Christmas
lighting.
lights.
Yeah,
they put it on their gutters and on their gables.
They're permanent Christmas lights, which means you can make them St. Patrick's Day lights. You can make
4th
them
of July lights, Arbor Day lights.
Which
it's kind of a thing.
They've got
right?
those.
They have those. They have those like in the hallways between the maintenance closet and the bathroom at the Moody Center. It's like it's lighting that they can adjust the output of to. It was all PFL stuff. They have these video board walls, right? You're walking in the maintenance tunnel, James, and the walls are video boards displaying PFL main event, Impaka Sunganai, Johnny Eblin. I'm just like, what the heck is this place? And that's Texas, right? And Texas was a Big 12 team, and obviously they're like
That's
one of they're one of the big boy kind of programs in all of college sports, but they're an SEC team now, and I'm just like, man, this is wild.
And listen, you mentioned just how close the SEC is for being the SEC again, right? In football in particular. Texas has the roster to just go out and win a national championship this year. They've had the roster the last 3 or 4 years. So Texas being in the SEC has really helped them. Just looked up the capacity, by the way, of the Moody Center. It's only a couple thousand less than the Delta Center. It's 15,000. So it's not that far off from the pro basketball arena we have here, and it sounds like it might be even nicer.
And it is their pro basketball arena because as of now they don't have a pro basketball team, although they've thrown their hat in there for potential hockey expansion.
Yeah.
So maybe basketball eventually too. I mean, Austin
Moody Center could be adapted for NHL hockey. If they don't build their own, they probably would build their own.
They would eventually, but that's where you would put it in the meantime, and everyone would look around and just be like, this is a pro arena. Because it's treated like a pro arena. When a big concert act goes to Austin, Texas, they're playing at the Moody Center. So it's kind of like this hybrid space. But the point is, right, the SEC is doing their media days, and the keeping up with the Joneses game that has happened for years and years and years and years in the SEC. I didn't go to Atlanta last week. I didn't go to Tuscaloosa last week, so I'm using Texas as the example. But, like, they have to keep up with one another so aggressively that you can almost justify taking your eye off the ball and looking at it and going like, oh, yikes. Look what happened in the Big Ten. Like, they just got all these great things going on. And they're going to be fine. The most predictable thing ever was that at this SEC Media Day, there was going to be some conversation about, hey, do you support the Protect College Sports Act? Do you support a certain college football playoff expansion? Do you support a specific model for NIL regulation? And the SEC, again, fancies themselves as sort of the leaders here, the thought shapers to where, well, what we want is this. Now everybody get on board and get in line. They're in a different spot because they're having their media days after the ACC media days, after the Big 12 media days. So everyone else has kind of already voiced their opinion on this. And the opinion is just that. It's not going to create any concrete change by itself, but the SEC wants to be in that position where they're like, this is what we want. And the subtext at this SEC Media Days in Tampa is, this is what we want to happen. This is what we hope happens. Oh, and by the way, if it doesn't look something like this, we have the option, and we're keeping the option open, of just exiting, just seceding from the union, just pulling out, which might be indelicate of me to say it that way since we're talking about the Southeastern Conference. But
SC seeding.
That's the headline.
SC Ascension. I don't know.
That James, you just wrote everyone's headline.
Secession.
SEC, all in capital letters, and then you finish SE seeding from college football. That's what it is. But I don't think there's any real danger of this right now. This is peacocking. This is posturing. This is whatever, and it's still something that we will keep half an ear and half an eye on. The SEC, how they compete this year. Very similar to, well, I shouldn't say very similar. On the same vein, at least, of how the Big 12 does this year in the college football playoff as a 12-team format. If again this year it's a one-bid league like we anticipated being, it's going to tell you a lot about what the Big 12 wants from the future of college football. If the SEC is out of the conference, out of the national championship game again this year. It's going to tell you a lot about what they want from college football moving forward. If Texas is there, or LSU is there, or Georgia is there, or Ole Miss has pretty incredible roster this year, like if any of those teams are there, then similarly, your predictive model can be like, okay, well, I know what they're going to say postseason, spring ball, off-season, media days, because now they're back at or near the top. Even if they have a team in the championship game, it's different than this last season, where all of us are kind of dancing on the grave, just like, oh, what happened to you, SEC? I thought it just means more. Where are you guys at? You had all these teams in the field, and you had all these teams complaining about not being in the field, while James Madison was there, and Tulane was there, and Texas Tech was there. But even your best teams didn't advance to do, like, it's kind of like the spectators making fun of the pro athletes in some ways.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, hey, what's wrong with you? You just got Rudy Gobert just blocked your shot.
Why are you crying? Did you just get dunked on?
Loser. And, the pro athlete's like rolling his eyes like, dude, what are you talking about? You work a regular 9 to 5, and I am going to get on a private plane with a 5-course meal in front of me in 10 minutes. Like, so there's a little bit of that when you're dancing on the grave of the SEC. However, it's worth keeping an eye on, because if they get more and more petulant, and if they get more and more frustrated with what's going on in college football specifically, but college sports in general, they do have the potential power to really cause a lot of upset. And honestly, this will be the last thing I say about SEC Media Days. Weirdly, I think that it is in the best interest of the University of Utah and of BYU by extension, and of the rest of the Big 12 by extension, to actually get on board with some of the things that the SEC is resisting about the Protect College Sports Act. A lot of times the SEC is acting in its own interest and with some sort of veiled, like, ally interest that also favors the Big Ten. Like, doesn't really do much for the ACC, certainly does almost nothing for the Big 12 in most of the policies that the SEC wants to support. The way that they're pushing back on certain aspects of the Protect College Sports Act, with the most salient and important ones being the expansion limitations, the expansion rules, that's something that if you're a Utah fan, you're actually like, okay, Greg Sankey, I hate 99% of the things that you say, but I vote in support of this particular clause that you are pushing back. You don't want a limit on 18 or 19 or even 20 teams in these super conferences. You don't want a 5-year forced independence if you do move from conference to conference. You want there to be a little bit more flexibility and mobility in the eventual landscape. Like, if you're Utah, you need for that rule to not be put in place, because if somehow it passes through, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, if the Protect College Sports Act passed as proposed, and you would have to serve this 5-year penalty before you could transfer, and by the way, you're probably not going to get invited anyway because we're capping these leagues at 19 teams, you are sentenced to purgatory in college sports for the indefinite future. It's not hell, all right? You're not a Mountain West Conference team. You're not a new Pac-12 team. You're not the Conference USA team. That eventually those guys are all going to have to be like, you know what? We have to play in the spring now. We have to do something else. We can't be expected to compete. We're going to no longer have Alabama on our schedule, period. We're not going to go and play preseason games against Michigan. It's getting to a point where it's absurd and ridiculous. And by the way, the big conferences are eliminating those types of games year by year anyway.
It's not unlike the way that the Ivy League a long time ago was like, yeah, we voluntarily choose not to be part of big-time college athletics.
Yeah.
And for obvious reasons. They're like, we want to keep it about academics, which, of course, if you're an Ivy League school, but yeah, in a different way, they're going to be playing at they're not going to be banished to FCS type play. These group of 5, group of 6 schools, but they will decidedly not be even in the zip code of the Power 4.
Zip code, by the way, is the right way to put it, because the most visible representation that all of us have in resource disparity is your zip code, right? We know who you are. We know your background. We know your job. We know your finance. In a lot of cases, based on your zip code, right? All of us know it. Like, oh, what neighborhood do you live in? Oh, congratulations. Wow.
I didn't know you were like that.
You're a plastic surgeon? I didn't know. You're an attorney? Wow. Good for you.
I'm sorry I wasn't familiar with your game.
Right? It's one of the things I appreciate about the Avenues, by the way. I live in the Avenues. You could tell people you live in the Avenues, and they're just,
you're a bigger deal.
They're just like, because there's parts, right? You don't know. You have to narrow it down. You have to be like, which avenue? What part of the Avenues?
I see.
And if you're trying to impress, you'll be like, this part. And if you're trying to be like mysterious, you'll be like, just the Avenues. Because like, great neighborhood, but eclectic, quite a mix, some different things, you know what I mean? Based on how high on the hill you are is a lot of the way. So
something I would never understand, OC. So just another way that you are just you're just at a higher level than me.
Well, but that's the thing, is you don't know if it's a higher level or not. It's just like,
that's exactly what people from the Avenues like to say.
Like, which avenue are we on here? Like, because I mean, there's a bunch of like, there's a broad range and a broad mix. If you tell people you live in Pepperwood, they're just like, oh, okay. There's no small houses there. There's no cheap houses there. There's no apartment buildings there. So it says something about you. So
and this is why Spence Checketts is a man of the people and you are Sean O'Connell.
Yeah, sure. But the zip code of college football, right? We know what the zip code of the Big Ten looks like. Even the cheapest house on the block, even the Maryland, you're just like, yeah, dude, you have a bad house, but you drive nice cars.
We're living right over here in the best way that we can over here in Piscataway, Rutgers University.
When someone's just like, yeah, man, we're in the SEC zip code, you're just like, whoa, okay, are you Arkansas? Because that's not great, but you live in a trailer park. You have 2 boats, though.
Yeah.
You know? So there's a lot of
double wide.
There's a lot of ways that zip code thing applies. And the SEC is always going to be a league that you keep your eye on, or at least for me, I'll keep my ear on what they say, because trickle-down economics and, more importantly, trickle-down power plays, power dynamics absolutely do exist in college sports. And for one of the biggest challenges, I think, for Brett Yormark and for the ACC commissioners and athletic directors and stuff, and for Mark Harlan and company, one of the biggest challenges of the position they're in right now is knowing the appropriate amount of pushback, the appropriate amount of resistance, the appropriate amount of compliance to show Sankey and the SEC, to show the Big Ten. Because you can't just be like, yeah, what they want is fine for us as long as we get invited to the party. You can't do that, or you're creating this parent-child relationship. But if you're too resistant, if you're too obstinate, if you push back just based on principle, if you're not realistic about your place and self-aware about your position in the power ladder of college sports, then they will crush you. They will put you under their gold-clad thumb, and they will press down until you're suffocated. And there are mechanisms that the SEC wants to maintain in order to be able to do that. So that's the other thing about this. If you're the president of the University of Utah, you're the athletic director at the University of Utah, you're the head coach of the football team, the head coach of the basketball team, right? Your dynamic with the SEC and, more importantly, with the SEC leadership and decision-making has to be markedly different than your commissioners. Because your commissioner has to be like, let's do what's best for all of us. And for your athletic department and your university, you have a little bit of that, but mostly you should be like, what's in our self-interest? Right? I mean, there's no secret that conversations happen, at least on an exploratory level, for what would it look like if we were to join the Big Ten? What would it look like if a super conference happened? How do we get on the right side of that line? Brett Yormark is the George Kliavkov in this situation, where he's just like, nope, we're hanging on, we're clinging, we're desperate, we're squeezing. We have an alliance. We have an alliance with the ACC. There's no contractual obligation here. There's no signatures on paper, but it's a gentleman's agreement.
We looked each other in the eye. We're not even making that up for effect for those that forgot.
That's real.
They actually said we looked each other in the eye. That's enough of an agreement. That's as binding as it needs to be.
So the SEC, as we're talking about their expectations relative to the Protect College Sports Act, listen to this and think about it with two filters on your ears. For the Big 12, what works? For the University of Utah, what works, right? The SEC offered 10 common sense suggestions.
They're calling them common sense suggestions.
Yes. That's what they call them.
Okay, Thomas Paine.
That's according to what they say. And then it's based on 4 key principles, which makes it a little bit more confusing.
Is
because
flag football one of their core principles?
Did we ever get any explanation on that? Did we ever get any clarification? Did anyone ask any follow-up question?
No one did, and I think part of the reason why is because Brett Yormark's opening address went in so many different directions that I think by the time he was done, and it was 20-ish minutes, people were like, I don't even remember all what he actually said, because he went in so many different directions with that.
People had completely lost the fact that he said flag football at the beginning of his.
It's a core principle or a core tenet, whatever term he used, of the Big 12 conference.
That had to be he just misspoke, right?
I don't think he did. I think that he was thinking like, we're the NFL. The NFL's like, they have put out there that we are obligated to grow the game at the grassroots level too. So that's why flag football is important to us. I think he was trying to think along those same lines and express those same lines, but it just doesn't make sense for the Big 12 conference.
I'm going with he got it tongue-tied with something about like flagship programs, football, and ended up saying flag football because it makes zero sense, but we don't need to backtrack that far.
That was an aside.
In any case, the SEC has 10 common sense suggestions to Congress to improve the Protect College Sports Act, but they're really 4 things. Enforceable national standards, okay? We can all get on board with this. Through the Big 12 lens and the SEC lens, it makes perfect sense. Enforceable national standards. Clear rules that apply across the board on the national front and are enforceable, meaning you can't just go to a judge, you can't go to a state's attorney and have them create an injunction. They want federal precedent to be set. Okay, we can all get on board with this. And that's where clause number 2 comes in. State law preemption. Limit state laws that circumvent the rules that you put in place. Limit them. Right now, we saw this play out with the Brendan Sorsby situation, right? Where they basically just went and called a bunch of people until they found a semi-retired judge that was just like, yeah, injunction granted. They literally were just like, can you do it? No, I'm not going to touch that. What about you? Well, you'll do that? No. How many judges are there? How many justices are there in the United States of America? Thousands and thousands.
Yeah, because you have appeals court, you have you have circuit court, you have Supreme Courts in every state and the one in the land. There's so many. Yeah.
This
and
other
retired ones and active ones.
This other one is just hilarious. Principle number 3 that the SEC wants to center on: transparency and accountability. Now, we can rewind less than a decade ago where there was zero transparency in where some of the money was coming from for coaches, players, programs in the SEC. And accountability was a matter of basically waiting until a Cam Newton-style investigation lost its luster in the news cycle, right? Where it was just like, so, wait, was it determined that you gave bags of cash for Cam Newton to be at Auburn? Yes or no, right? That investigation dragged on for like 3 years. And then the average college sports fan, if you ask them today, would just be like, what was the ruling on that? What was the official NCAA ruling on that? All of us would kind of shrug and just be like, I think it's generally accepted that probably happened, but there was no real sanction for it. Remember when Laramie Tunsil got like bribed by his stepdad on the day of the draft or whatever?
Yeah.
And was asked about it. Like, he was not bribed, blackmailed kind of, with the gas mask bong. And then he decided to just kind of come clean, just clear the air. And 5 minutes after he's out of college, he's just like, yeah, if I needed money, I just went to my position coach and said, hey, mom's got to pay the bills. And somebody took care of it. And everyone was just like, oh, that's weird that he's admitting that. Anyway, look the other way.
Yeah.
Right? So the SEC saying that they want accountability is quite hilarious. But I applaud their efforts in making us think that they're serious about
It's
it.
a common sense principle. By the way, do you have a guess on how many judges there are? I found the approximate number.
13,000.
There are 30,000 state judges, approximately,
Okay.
and approximately 1,700 federal judges.
Okay. So
according to the University of Denver.
So let's say that the Protect College Sports Act and the SEC suggestions are enough for them to be like, you know what? Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's preempt state law that likely removes the influence, or at least severely diminishes the influence, of those 30,000 estimated state justices. But there's still 1,700 federal level judges that you now could potentially, I mean, that is, what a legal nightmare.
Yeah.
And maybe what college football and really the big conferences need, or the eventual super conference needs, is an antitrust exemption like the NFL's got, where everyone is just like,
yeah,
we're not like, let these other leagues try to compete. Like, they don't have to my knowledge, they don't have it like a literal on paper antitrust exemption, but they are a monopoly. The NBA is a monopoly.
Well,
the
no,
NHL is a monopoly.
I learned about this recently. The leagues, pro sports leagues, do have antitrust exemptions, which is why they have unions, players' unions. So antitrust comes with,
you're right.
comes with collective bargaining agreement, which means unions for players, referees, coaches, whatever.
Which goes all the way back to the sports all the way back to 1961.
Yeah.
Because they're a struggling league. They were just like, we have to do something for them so that their games will stay on broadcast television, which is another hilarious thing, because what has happened in the NFL?
They're going off of broadcast
They're
television.
going off of regular old broadcast television. Now you got to have the streaming service. You got to have the Amazon Prime, Netflix sooner than later, all that. Anyway, the SEC's core principles behind the 10 common sense suggestions finish with: preserve voluntary decision-making, maintain fair standards without overly mandating specific organizational outcomes. So, principle number 1 is, hey, we want uniformity and clear rules that apply to everyone. And principle number 4 is, but still make sure that you're not mandating everything and that you allow us to maintain sovereignty over our decision-making as conferences and individual universities. That is going to be a significant rub, right? We want Congress, the United States government, to step in and create a standard that everyone has to live by and that cannot be threatened in state courts. But also, we don't want you telling us what to do. I feel like this happens on a daily basis at my home, where my kids want to be left to play. They want to be left to, like, create their own little Lord of the Flies kingdom in the playroom, right? But then when someone receives or is at the receiving end of a grave injustice, what's the first thing they do? They call for mom and dad. They want mom and dad to enforce the sharing rule. They want
punish him.
Yeah. Like, she won't give me that toy. That's my toy. It's just like, all right, you guys have to share. And then it's like, oh, yeah, see, you got to share. So give it to me. No, you both have to share. So you have to take turns with it. They're just like, what? No, that's supposed to be, but no. I don't want to have to share there. They're supposed to share here, right? I feel like that's what the SEC is doing to some extent. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on it. SEC Media Days continue today. The Big 12 is not operating in a vacuum. It is influenced very heavily by everything that comes out of SEC and Big 10 Media Days, and more importantly, the decision makers that speak there. Gordy Chiesa is going to join us. We've got Sammy Morris still to come. We've got Amy Hogue. We're getting started on a Tuesday. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in, Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA guru. Hi, Gordy.
Sean, how's it going?
It's going all right. I want to start with something we just hit on in James's update. The commissioner of the NBA has expressed some interest in hurrying LeBron James along because his lack of a decision so far makes them feel like it's hard to schedule, which I think we could push back on pretty significantly if we wanted to. But is LeBron's destination that important that the NBA doesn't already kind of know where the star power is in their league?
The answer is no, that they're going to wait till LeBron, and the reason why is usually he's going to go to probably a team that might go deep in the playoffs. All right, so it could be the Cavaliers, possibly, could be the 76ers, could be the Miami Heat, which then would add to them going deeper in the playoffs. And an outside situation could be the Golden State Warriors for all those older guys, one last run, because we're all basically friends via the Olympics, and that we think we could surprise people. So it's held up. And also add to that, Sean, the Christmas package, where Christmas Day basically is the opening part of the NBA season, where they showcase 7 games, and they're waiting for LeBron to see where he goes, where they maneuver those games. So it's unheard of that only one player holds it up, but I can see why they're doing it.
So LeBron has expressed the opinion that he's not going to be rushed by anybody. He's going to take his sweet time, and I suppose he has earned that right here. My question is, what does the courtship process look like at this moment? He kind of knows what everyone else has for the most part. I think we all have at least some strong opinion about who's going to win and who's not. He probably has a good idea of who are contenders without him and who could be sincere contenders with him. This is not going to be a salary-based decision by all accounts. So what are the teams using to make a case for LeBron to come there right now?
Him feeling with the players comfortable. In other words, those veteran players that he knows for a long time, that he keeps talking to them about something behind the scenes that they could tell him that maybe he didn't know about. So it's more just being comfortable. This last contract will be the next 2 years. We'll put him 25 seasons in the NBA. And so that's why it's important. And the team I like the most is the 76ers, because they have Tyrese Maxey, who's very good, and Joel Embiid, which is the X factor. When he's healthy, he is tremendous. Let's not forget, Joel Embiid is averaging 27 points per game for his career. And so it gives him a low post option. The problem, again, he's been hurt. Last year, Joel Embiid played the most consecutive games last season with 6. So that is a concern. So with the 76ers, with Tyrese Maxey being absolutely a star player, and with Jaylen Brown being there, another star player, they had a Dean Wade from the Cavaliers, who's a good outside shooter, all-around player. And then with VJ Edgecombe, they have a young star. It's probably the best basketball fit. That and possibly the Heat, because of Giannis being there. So there's so many reasons why he should go to certain teams. And again, it's more feeling how he feels with the teammates in the last 2 years of his career.
When you say the 76ers are maybe the best basketball fit, what percentage of that being the best fit is with Joel Embiid healthy versus not? Because if I'm LeBron, that's a big part of this decision. If I feel like I could win a championship there as long as Joel's healthy, I have to believe that he's going to be mostly healthy. So how much of the fit that you're talking about is attached to a healthy Joel Embiid?
Dramatically a fit. The answer is yes. That if we knew Father's time what would happen, it would be done already. And she's just trying to get all information about Joel Embiid, either talking directly or talking to people that are around him, Joel Embiid. How's his work ethics? But if he does get hurt, does he come back? These are all things that he's just trying to outsource to people that he trusts so he can make a better decision. And also, it's Jimmy Butler also with the Warriors. Jimmy's hurt right now. He's coming back probably sometime in December. And what is he going to play like as far as his skill set, injuries, etc., the recovery time? These are all question marks, and LeBron has to try to figure it out. And money is no issue. He's probably going to sign for the veteran minimum of $3.88 million. So money is absolutely no issue as far as his point of view, and also the salary cap structure or luxury tax. It's irrelevant right now in this situation. So it's exciting. We'll see how it all plays out. LeBron's still at age 40. He'll be 42 in December. He's still an elite player. He can score 29 in a playoff game to hold off the opponent to win by one. And that's why those 3 or 4 teams I mentioned, that's the reason why they want them.
I can't believe I'm asking this question because it matters in every other case, and it probably matters here, but I'm not sure how much. But he's LeBron James, and he could be the head coach of whatever team he's on if he wanted to. So how much does the fit with the coach matter here? We know that in L.A. he was kind of able to put who he wanted in place, and if you're only signing for 2 years at the end of your career, I don't think a franchise is going to give you that kind of latitude anymore. So when you look at Minnesota, Cleveland, Golden State, 76ers, and all these options, obviously Miami, he's very familiar down there. Like, how much does the coach matter in this decision, do you think?
Not as much. But truly not, because he's going to go to a veteran team where the players somewhat are self-direct the team internally, which is absolutely critical. And that's most teams that have veteran players. The head coach is absolutely in charge of leadership, but the internal part of it, where the teammates, where they really police themselves, whether it's training habits, whether it's curfew, whether on a 4-game losing streak, that they all come together for a meeting and say, what's going on here? We're not moving the ball. We're not playing help-to-help defense. So the coach, with these type of players, they really are on the floor coaching. So it's not as relevant as far as importance versus a younger team where the coach is absolutely critical as far as developing good habits. Now with Steve Kerr, the Warriors, he knows him very well. Eric Spoelstra of the Heat, he knows very well. Nick Nurse, in a good way, is a wild card. So he doesn't really know him as well. But Nick Nurse is absolutely a tremendous coach. He's a really great communicator, and he's got a personality in a good way where he lets the stars be stars, and he never overreacts. Even though he's emotional in a good way, he fights for his players on the sideline. It should be very interesting.
If you're an opposing GM, an opposing owner, an opposing coach, and LeBron ends up in your division and even in your conference, in the Eastern Conference, right? We're seeing teams, and I think the Jazz had some of this in their mind, building their roster. You're seeing, like, hey, you have to counteract what the other contenders in your space have. Is LeBron still a big enough factor wherever he lands that roster construction around him or in the other teams around the league and the other teams around the conference and the division will potentially change to try to counteract LeBron's presence?
No, not right now. Not at age 42. No. The answer is no. He's a tremendous player, but they wouldn't try to just counteract him. The only people trying to counteract is Victor Wembanyama, because he is such an oddity in a great way. So you have to get big guys to try to match up with him. And that's big guys that have mobile feet that can be able to guard him out on perimeter. And so with LeBron right now, it's not. But again, the 76ers with Jaylen Brown being there, who's a tremendous two-way player, and so is LeBron, and so is Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid when he's healthy, and so is young VJ Edgecombe. That they have a really great roster, the 76ers. And if LeBron did go there, it would be advantageous for him to try to attempt, again, to win a championship. Winning is so hard in the NBA. There's so many factors that are involved. There's so many ups and downs in the postseason where 1 or 2 plays could turn around your season. Like, for example, we're praising the Knickerbockers, but the Spurs in those 5-game series, they lost some of those games that were self-inflicted themselves, where they were up, 14, 16 points, and they weren't able to hold on a lead. Was it the Knicks' great defense? Was it Jalen Brunson's brilliance, usually in the fourth quarter? Yes. However, from the Spurs' point of view, they lost those games themselves, and then they're going to try to correct it. Thunder, here in the West also, they're saying Game 7, if we had Jalen Williams full force as far as last season, we would have knocked out the upstart Spurs. So, again, we'll see. In Jazz basketball, they're trying to get their young talent into a defensive mindset. So in Jazz point of view, as far as them moving up in the standings, they've got to address that defensive lack of fill the blanks in, whether it's ball containment, whether it's getting to the corner to challenge the three-point shot, whether it's playing consistent help to help the defense. These are all little / big things that will help a team win. And it's most times when teams win, it's the almost like the invisible things why a team wins. The nuances of certain things. Sean, like in football, when the running backs crack somebody as far as on the edge rushes to give the quarterback an extra second to step into a throw. Little things. Help a defense. Little things. Mismatch rebounding. These are all things that make basketball and football so unbelievable, nuance-orientated.
Gordy Chase, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Our conversations with Gordy, the resident NBA guru, brought to you by Aladdin Industries. If you're looking for a skylight, maybe even exploring that idea, Aladdin Industries is your Velux dealer here in the state of Utah. You mentioned the Thunder just a second ago, and they made a sneaky big trade. They unload Lou Dort and the salary associated with Lou Dort. He goes to the Hawks in a 3-team deal. 3 second-round picks coming to Oklahoma City. Zachary Riza-Shea goes to the Mavericks, and Ryan Nembhard ends up in Atlanta. Obviously, Lou Dort has been very important to what the Thunder do defensively, especially. Let's start there. What does that roster look like without Lou Dort? This feels like it's pretty salary-driven for me.
Oh, very much. That's an understatement. Sean, so the Thunder, first thing about the Thunder, they have wicked smart people that work there, meaning Sam Presti. Absolutely. And so they have a tremendous situation, and they had to make a financial move with Lou Dort, who's defensive-minded, but we saw in the playoffs that his lack of overall consistent shooting exposed them somewhat. So they make that trade with Lou Dort going to the Hawks. And entering right now, Sean, the free agency after the draft, the Thunder were going to pay $224 million in payroll and money tax. As we speak right now, they're going to pay $19 million. That's it. They went from $224 million extra dollars to down to 19 just by moving Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins, and Isaiah Joe. So they did that for financial reasons, and they're able to maintain those strong. By doing that, though, they still maintain their core. So Lou Dort, everyone likes, but he was a luxury. So they still kept Shea, Jules Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. They're able to keep. They are able to keep Cason Wallace. They're able to keep Alex Caruso. They're able to re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein. And so eventually they're going to have to give money to Cason Wallace. They know that, and A.J. Mitchell. So they kept their core people for another great run for the Thunder, and in Jazz basketball, that's what you're trying to chase.
What do you think? I mean, is Lou Dort going to justify kind of a close to max extension or max extension with the Hawks? I mean, he was part of the reason that he was so important for the Oklahoma City Thunder is because they kind of have everything else, and he's a great defensive player. He's got some offensive limitations, and I don't know if he's as valuable of a piece for a non-contender as he is for a contender. Maybe it's unfair of me to call the Hawks a non-contender, but I think you understand the point. Is Lou Dort going to be as valuable, and will his salary and a potential extension reflect that for Atlanta as he was for Oklahoma City?
Well, extension right now is probably not on the table. He makes this year coming up, the 26-27 season, he makes $17.7 million. He's one-dimensional in a good way, defensive-minded. And the Hawks have some other good players, also defensive-minded, in Dyson Daniels, and they have this young, talented star player in Jalen Johnson. And so everything is based on Jalen Johnson as far as what they're doing right now, and they really like their team with also Nickel Walker-Alexander. And so they have a good young core. TJ McCollum, we all like. Tremendous all-around player at age 35. They gave him the one-year contract. So the Hawks are trending up, but they didn't overpay dramatically to just a one-year contract. So I always say this all the time, Sean, is that when it's a one-year contract that you inherited, oh, by the way, we are engaged. We're not married to the player. So one-year contracts are never bad because it's by next July you can get out of it, or we like what we saw, we want to re-sign somebody, meaning what? Lou Dort. So the Hawks did the right thing for them, and so did the Thunder. Did the correct thing for them, and that's why the Thunder and the Spurs and all the teams here in the West right now. Sean, I'm looking forward to one little quick side note about this. As far as I'm trending right now, looking to see the Portland Trailblazers, if it works or not. Where John Morant goes to the Trailblazers, it's not his talent, it's more where his head's at right now. Dame Lillard's there right now. Drew Holiday, tremendous two-way player, and then Scoot Henderson, who played very well for them. So I'm looking forward to see which guy is moved. So it's got to be probably Drew Holiday, because Scoot Henderson's the future. John Morant is the present right now, and Dame Lillard is going to try to recapture what he once did there as the franchise player. So I'm looking to see what happens with Drew Holiday between now and training camp.
Gordy, what's your list today?
All right, my list today, Sean, let's talk offense for a second today. This list is a baker's dozen all-time NBA career leaders in most regular season games of scoring 25 points or more. The all-time leaders, how many times these players scored 25 points or more in an NBA game regular season. It's really who's who in basketball. Number 13, Steph Curry did it 543 times. Number 12, Shaquille O'Neal did it 555. Number 11, James Harden has done it 563. Number 10, Dominique Wilkins, 574. Number 9, Jerry West, 581. Number 8, Oscar Robinson, 584. Number 7, Wilt Chamberlain, 632. Number 6, Kobe Bryant, 692. Number 5, Michael Jordan, 769. Number 4, Kevin Durant, 777. Number 3, Karl Malone, scored 25 points or more in 789 regular season games. Number 2 all-time. He did it with a sky hook. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar scored 793 times, 25 points or more. And number 1, Sean, right on cue. You and I talked about him previously a few minutes ago. LeBron James is the all-time leader in most ever 25-point games or more regular season with 989 times. So he should get it. He should crack that list of 1,000 times he'll score over 25 points or more. His next team, wherever it might be, whether it's 76ers, Warriors, Heat, or Cavs, he shall do it. So it's really an unbelievable list where the consistency of scoring points in the game, 25 points or more, LeBron's number 1, and Karl Malone in Jazz basketball is number 3.
Wow, number 3.
Sean, speaking of Wilt Chamberlain, you see today about his auction, what happened with Wilt Chamberlain.
Yes, with the jacket.
Yep.
The warm-up jacket. Yeah, we've got that for the Daily Dump later. So Gordy's teasing something we're going to talk about in about 30 minutes. A Wilt Chamberlain jacket found at effectively the DI. We'll tell you the full story coming up here. Gordy, you're the man. Appreciate your time as always.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out.
That's Gordy Chiesa. We'll double up here. We'll start hour number 2 with Sammy Mora talking Utah football on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Hour number 2 on the Sean O'Connell Show. We're going to talk a little Utah football here. Camp begins on, well, not this next Monday, but the Monday after, August 3rd. We're less than 2 weeks away now from the beginning of Morgan Scalley's first camp as head football coach. We'll ask Sammy Mora when she joins us this same question, but 877-353-0700. I want to hear from you as well. What do you need to see changed? I'm not talking about like, oh, I want to see more access to the team. I want to see more interesting interviews from the head coach. We know that this is a different era in Utah football. What's the biggest change you need to see? I'm talking about from a tactical standpoint. I'm talking about what would have been the thing that got Utah over the hump last year. They were a really good team last year. 10 regular season wins, 11 wins after the bowl game, which, of course, Morgan Scalley coached as the head man in his first real game as head football coach. Kyle Whittingham leaving for Michigan prior to that, right? So what is the thing that you want to see change? What is the change you want to see is a better way to phrase that. We know there's going to be changes. But I'm not asking what you think. I think they're going to pass more this year. What do you want to see be the change? Morgan Scalley calls you as a fan and said, look, man, it's a clean slate. I get to do whatever I want to do. I get to make this my product. The Utah football team this year is going to look different. How do you want it to look different? We know all the ways we want it to be the same. All of us are just like, yeah, you better play great defense. You better be able to run the ball. What's the change you want to see? I got a couple ideas myself. I want to hear from you. 877-353-0700. The change that you have to see in Utah football, the change that you think is absolutely necessary for them to achieve what they can achieve, what they should achieve, what they want to achieve this coming season. 877-353-0700. Sammy Mora, kind enough to join us, Utes Insider, friend of the program. Hi, Sammy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm going to ask you that exact same question I just threw out there for our text line. We know it's going to look different somehow. We don't know all the ways that it's going to look different. We don't know all the ways that it's going to look the same. But Morgan Scalley, he gets you on the phone and he says, look, Sammy, it's a fresh start, okay? We got vanilla ice cream here. What toppings are you putting on this thing? You know the ice cream is good. Utah football by itself is good. But what is something you want to be part of this program that maybe wasn't last year? And it could be as specific, it could be as tactical as you want it to be. What is something, a change that Sammy Mora demands to see, needs to see in Utah football under a new head coach?
I think it's twofold for me. I think the defensive tackle room, I want to see them get back to the defensive tackle rooms of the past, like the Starlo Tulele, that era of Utah football defensive tackles, just guys that are absolute game changers on the interior of that defensive line. I think that the defensive tackle room this season, I have a lot more confidence in than I did last season. From a size perspective alone, there's a lot bigger bodies. There's a lot of guys who, are going to make their money on stopping the run, which is something that Utah struggled with last season, especially in the back half of the year. So I think that is the first one that I want to see. And the second one is I want to see a truly balanced offense. I know that Kyle Whittingham talked a lot about having a balanced offense and, you run to open the pass and all those types of things. But if you look back at statistics, specifically last year, Utah, the run game blew the passing game out of the water. Devin had the passing game had 2,800 yards, so the rushing's 3,400. That's not balanced as much as people want to claim it's balanced. It's not. I want to see a more balanced offense. I want to see Utah be in contention with some high-level receivers, whether it be high school kids, portal kids. I want kids to be, want to join Utah because they're willing to air it out as well as run the ball. So I think those are the two big things for me. But the offensive identity of this program needs to change because, teams know that Utah's going to run the ball, and it's time for that to change.
I like that. We've already got that answer a couple of times, so there's other Utah fans that feel the same way. And, we have talked about that. We talked about it through spring ball. We've talked about it kind of at Big 12 Media Days. Morgan Scalley has said, all the praiseworthy things for this wide receiving core. And one thing is, like, I could make demands of this Utah football program and just be like, well, I need you to have the best defensive back in the entire country. And it might be possible, it might not be. It feels like with the bodies they have in the wide receiver room and what the quarterback room looks like, that this year might be the right year to put that on paper, to put that out there, to put that on film and show people that this is not a 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense, not exclusively anymore. Is this wide receiving core ready for that duty if indeed the coaching staff puts it on them?
I think so. And we've talked a lot about, the wide receiver room over on Ute Zone going back to before spring ball started. And I'm still in the camp that on paper, this is probably the one of the more deep wide receiver rooms Utah's had in recent memory. I mean, Creed Whittemore, if you take him, for example, he was probably wide receiver 3, maybe 4 last year when everything was said and done. But this year, with just the sheer depth they have, Creed might be wide receiver 6. It's just there's so many different guys that can do so many different things. And, a lot of it's projection. Braden Pagan, he had 900 yards as a receiver last year in the same offense. Can he do the same thing this year? It's projection right now. But if they can put it on the field, then yeah, I think that you should expect that change from the wide receiver room. But until then, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, the projections are saying this. Can they actually do it when, the stadium lights are on and the TV cameras are rolling and things like that?
You also mentioned the defensive tackle room, and this is the thing that I talked about with the access we got at spring football. I'm very much like, okay, I'm hearing the same names from guys, and they like Jai Moy is the guy whose name came out of everyone's mouth. And I'm like, cool, I love that. That's great. He's small, right? Now, that's fine. You can be small and be successful as a defensive tackle. Maybe the best interior defensive line in the history of the NFL is a guy who was 40 pounds lighter than everyone around him. Steve Fifita was one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah. He was, well, not height-wise, he was small. Weight-wise, he wasn't small, and that's kind of where Jai fits in from a physical profile standpoint. And you mentioned, hey, there's some bodies in this room that make you feel confident that we could get back to this being a Utah D-line that people are really excited about. Who are they? Because you lost a couple. Jonah Lea'ea is someone that you did not want to lose out of the room. So who are the names that you're looking at and saying, like, yes, this is why the D-line can get back to where it was?
I think the two for me, like you mentioned, Jai is going to be – he's going to do what he needs to do, and I think he's going to have some big plays for Utah this fall. Size is not an issue with him. He's told many people that, he uses that size as his, his superpower. He's like, I know that I'm small, and I want to prove people that just because you're 6 foot, you can still play defensive tackle at a high level. And, if you have offensive linemen at Utah who are, 6, 7 inches taller than him that are saying, yeah, Jai's hard to defend, I mean, that's something to, accept. But I think from outside of him, the two that are the biggest for me, literally and, in terms of what they're going to produce, hopefully, is Carson Kafusi and Lucas Amsula. Carson's 6'6", 305, and then Lucas is 6'4", 306. Those are some big guys in the interior of that defensive line. And Lucas even told us during spring, I want to stop the run. That is what I'm here to do. I don't want people to be able to run the ball on me. So I think that's really encouraging when you have someone who that's literally all he wants to do is stop the run. And Carson is someone that we saw him at spring. He looked completely different than he did last fall. He has reworked his body. People talk about that man strength that kids get, around their second year. Carson has fully gotten that. He looks just like a mountain of a man, and he had some in spring. You and I stood next to each other. We watched defensive tackles like a couple of times. He had some big plays. Like he was getting off the offensive lineman really quickly. So I think those are probably the two biggest ones that I'm circling. Jamal Wallace, I think, is going to be someone that fans kind of are sleeping on right now, but I think he might have a couple of good moments this fall. And then obviously Pupu Sepulona. He came in as like a high 4-star, and I think that last season was rough. But true freshman, he wasn't here for spring, so it's going to be interesting to see how he has reacted to a full off season with Utah.
So camp less than 2 weeks away, and we don't know. We did the whole Camp Kyle thing for 21 years, right? We don't know what bent or flavor Morgan's going to put on it. There's going to be more similarities than differences, in my opinion, and we'll see what level of access we get during actual fall camp versus spring ball, which was a little bit more open than we were accustomed to. But from what conversations you've had and just kind of what we know of the vibe, do you think fall camp is significantly different for this team in any way?
Well, I think the big thing is that outside of, a small handful of, position battles where it be backup or stuff like that, like we kind of have an idea of who the starting 11 are going to be on both sides of the football. And I think that, at least from my vantage point, that takes a lot of pressure off because it feels really good, specifically at quarterback, that this is what we're not heading into this fall camp with like some sort of quarterback battle hanging over our head. Like we know Devin's a starter. We know Birds is backup. Like that's cut and dry. And I think that it benefits that you're not every week like, oh, well, how's this battle going? How's that battle going? How's this doing? How's that going? Because now you can actually focus in on locking in those finer details, getting ready to actually play a game against someone who's not wearing the same jersey as you. Game installation, game preparation, preparing for your opponents, all sorts of things like that. And I think that's the big thing. And it helps. Like, obviously, offensive line, there's still some things they got to figure out there. The outside corner spot opposite Scooby still needs to be figured out. What the true rotation looks like at defensive end and defensive tackle. But you know the names that are going to be involved. It's not like you still don't know who's going to be in contention for those roles. Like, it's just solidifying things this fall, which I think is going to help. It's going to take things off of Morgan. As a first-year head coach, there's a lot that's thrown at you, and there's a lot that you have to get used to. And I think not having 84 billion position battles is something that should, make things a little bit easier this fall.
Sammy Moore is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking Utah football, who begins fall camp on August 3rd. That is less than 2 weeks away. We are almost there, people. Football season is right around the corner. I think the prevalence of early enrollees for top recruits especially has kind of taken a little bit of the fun out of this. But every year that I can remember, either being part of Utah football or being close to watching Utah football, there's always like a guy who shows up, whether he's, a random JUCO dude or he's a freshman coming out of high school or he's a transfer that maybe didn't get on everyone's radar, who starts to pop in fall camp. It's the smell of the grass. It's the whatever that just like wakes something up in these people, and they become suddenly an unexpected part of the present plans for Utah football. Like I said, early enrollees kind of like take a little guesswork out of this because you get the best players on campus in January for the most part. But is there anyone that is going to start off in fall camp in 2 weeks that you're like, this person might actually see the field when we get to September 3rd?
I think there's two that might, but they're both, in that category of early enrollees and stuff. I think Bear Fisher, the tight end, and I think Nick Brown, the corner, are two that, might see some time. I'm not going to say they're going to start, but they probably will, trot out the field in, garbage time situations, things like that. And, with the new 5 for 5, that's going to allow a lot of these kids to see the field, maybe a little bit sooner, just because, redshirting's not a thing anymore. So in garbage time, you're not like, oh, well, I can't play this guy in garbage time because we've already played him, 3.5 games. And if we play him again, he's going to lose his red shirt type of thing. But I think Bear at tight end's one of those positions that feels slightly weird to me right now. Like we know that Noah Benny is, he's all reports coming out of spring ball was that he was making big time plays, that it looks to be another option in the passing game. all of those things that Utah needs from a tight end. After him, it gets kind of questionable. I mean, I'm not going to include Hunter Andrews in this argument. I'm not going to include Semi and Sione in this argument because those three play a very, very different role than what the traditional tight end role that Utah has plays. So it's outside of Noah, who is that, tight end two? Is it Will Monty or is it Bear Fisher or is it a combination of the two? Will played a lot. He's played a lot of football. He played at Utah State. He played at Oklahoma State. He's played at multiple different schools. But does he have what it takes to get into that second tight end role, or does Bear make that jump? Because Bear had some really, really, really impressive catches this spring. Like, I remember seeing him make some one-handed grabs that I was like, okay, this kid has it. And he came into the program already at a good weight, so you're not worried about putting weight on him. So that's one that I've kind of circled. Nick Brown is the other one. Came in a little bit undersized. He is I think he's at 160, I want to say, on the roster right now in terms of weight, 170 actually. He looked small. He looked skinny. Did he put on the weight necessary this summer to be the backup nickel? Because Sharif Shaw talked about him a lot, especially in the back half of camp, and that how nickel is one of the hardest positions you have to play on this Utah defense. And Nick rose to the challenge and rose to the opportunity to play nickel at this level. Can he, did he do what he needed to do this offseason to put himself in a position to possibly back up Rock Caldwell at nickel and see some time on the field?
You mentioned Noah Benny. Jackson Benny is a guy that it's okay, this dude's going to be an all-conference level performer, but where? Doing what? What is it actually going to look like? His versatility, I think, actually ended up hurting him as an individual a little bit last year, because they're all right, you got to be a receiver today. Oh, you got to be a nickel today. Oh, you know what? You're a safety now. Is there a more articulated plan, you think, heading into 2026 for Jackson Benny?
Well, I think you're going to see him at safety. I think that's the big thing for him. The reason why you saw him moving around so much last year is because of, one, lack of depth at wide receiver and lack of, experience there. And two, you had him playing nickel for half the season because they didn't know because Smith was playing on the outside, and then you moved people around, and then you have Jackson go back to safety when Rabbit goes down, and it was just, he never truly settled into one position, it felt like. And I think that if you have him focus on just one position, and I personally think it should be safety, he has to be all conference. He's already on a bunch of pre-2027 draft boards as one of the best safeties in the nation. So I think you're going to see him more at safety because you don't need him to play nickel. You have Rock, you have potentially Nick Brown, you have James Chenault, you have a bunch of different guys that can play that nickel if need be. But safety is where Jackson should be. Center field, blitzing occasionally, in run support, occasionally dropping him into coverage. That's where he needs to be. He had the team high 4 interceptions last season. I honestly think he could match that or maybe even do more if he's playing safety full time this fall. So I think safety is where he needs to be. I think that's where you're going to see a majority of the season. And, let him just play. Let the kid go. He's so dynamic and he's such a playmaker that if you just let him roam around the field and do what he needs to do, Jackson's going to come up with a play. He's always around the ball, and I think that's where he needs to be.
We got an email the other day about the Hall of Fame inductees: Zane Beadles, DeLon Wright, Daria Bijak, the 1991 softball team. We're going to interview Amy Hogue, who was part of that softball team, coming up here on the show today. And it's a great list. Your thoughts on the inductees to this Hall of Fame class?
Well, first of all, it makes me feel kind of weird that now we're at that point of Hall of Fame people that I remember watching when I was little and growing up. I remember watching DeLon Wright when I was in high school. I remember I have a photo of me and my little brother with Zane Beadles.
Sammy, I was a full-blown old man by the time DeLon Wright was coming through this program. So imagine how it makes me feel. But I'm glad you've got this recognition. Yeah.
Yeah. See, now it's like one of those things about you're finally an adult when moment. It's one of those eureka moments for me, I feel like. But it's it's a good class. I like DeLon is like, one of those players that every year people are like, well, why can't we have another DeLon Wright type on the basketball team? Why can't we miss DeLon? Like DeLon would have been great on this team. Like he's one of those guys that everyone loves, and he was such a great player for Utah. Same with Zane. Like Zane Beatles is like one of those other guys that when you think of like really great offensive linemen for Utah in that time period, it's like Jordan Gross, Zane Beatles, like those are two of the biggest ones that you think of. But it's exciting. It's always a fun time when you see who gets inducted into these Hall of Fames, because they go through a lot to get into these positions. And, like Mark Harlan said in his little video, like only 1 or 2% of student athletes from Utah get inducted into this Hall of Fame. So it's honestly like just a massive honor for them. And it's always exciting to see who it is, like every year. It's just like not Russian roulette, but it's like spin the wheel of who could it be now, because there's just historically across every sport, there's so many athletes that thrived doing what they did.
Okay, I've got a couple unfair questions for you to finish things off. We'll start with the one that is less unfair, but it's predictive. So the toughest game on Utah's schedule this year is what?
Oh, God. Arizona. You're on the road. You're in Tucson. Tucson's never been, the greatest place for Utah. Noah Fafita is Noah Fafita. He's an elite quarterback in this conference and in this league. And I think that game's it's in a weird position on the schedule. I think Arizona's probably the hardest. I know people are like, Sammy, why didn't you say BYU? Morgan Scally played in this game. He grew up around this game for a long time. I think he's going to bring a different edge to this game than there previously was. And I'm not saying that it's going to get like even more vitriol and vile than it has been. I think that Morgan knows how, like, not to say Kyle didn't know how important the game was, but Morgan truly knows how important this game is, as someone who's lived it his entire life. So I think having Morgan in charge of that, having BYU at home, I think that one's like a very close second, but I'm going to go with Arizona as the toughest game on the schedule.
I thought you were going to say that, and I don't disagree with you at all, because yeah, I mean, the low-hanging fruit is, of course, BYU, the rivalry game. Probably you could circle that every single year. But yeah, that Arizona game looms large for me as well. And I think it was Joel Klatt said he thinks the winner of that game ends up as one half of the Big 12 championship game. So I don't know that he's far off in his prediction, if I have that right.
Yeah, that game is there's just so many conference implications that are hanging over on that game specifically, because BYU and Arizona meet very early in the season. So their head-to-head matchup will be done like by the time conference play starts, if I remember correctly.
That's right. They're week 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you'll know what, like, that's going to be a key game for the conference that week. And I think that, you kind of learn a lot about both teams that weekend. So I still think, if whoever wins that game is sitting pretty in the conference standings, but then that Utah-Arizona game is just even more massive.
Okay, now this next question, this will be my last question, and it's completely irresponsible to even ask, but that's who I am, so I guess you could deal with it. Pete Thamel reported from SEC Media Days yesterday that, going through the fine print and talking about the Protect College Sports Act, and one of the things that is really causing an issue for the SEC getting on board and some other programs getting on board is that there's a clause in there that says if conference realignment happens, if you're a Power 4 team that wants to go to a different conference, you would first have to be an independent for 5 years in college football. And I had a good laugh about this yesterday, but just for the sake of conversation, knowing full well that it's not a reality at this moment, would it be worth it for Utah athletics if, like, the Big Ten came a-calling and said, hey, we want you as soon as we can get you, but that rule was in place? Would it be worth it for Utah athletics to be independent for 5 years to get into the Big Ten? And I guess the extension of that question is, could you survive those 5 years if you had to?
Well, I think that's like one of those things that, I've been thinking about since that came out yesterday as well. But like, I think one of the things that it depends on is who else is in that situation, because I don't think there's a way in which, like, I understand the 19 teams thing is like still on the table too, but like if the SEC also goes like after teams, there's going to be a bunch of teams that have to be independent for those 5 years. So who are those other five? Who are the other teams, so to speak, that are independent?
Okay, I'll let's do this together. So let's say the 19-team thing goes away, right?
Okay.
And the SEC is just like, we're going to add Texas Tech and we're going to add Miami and North Carolina and Florida State, just for the sake of the conversation, right? And the Big Ten just like, okay, fine. We're going to grab Utah and BYU and Colorado and whoever else you want to put in there, right? So it's another mass round of realignment, so to speak. You're not doing it just by yourself, but not everyone is in the same financial situation. Not everyone is in the same situation from a competitive standpoint. Like some teams, like Colorado they're already a mess, right? They're already digging themselves this insane hole. I don't know that they would make it the 5 years at their current rate of spending if you're not getting television revenue or whatever. So, like, if you extend it out to that level of hypothetical, I'll leave the floor to you.
I think it kind of depends. Like, what is Crimson Brand Partners doing? Is there enough of a nest egg for Utah to keep themselves afloat for all those years? Because I don't think scheduling would be an issue, especially if there's a large number of teams that, go at the same time, because then you just schedule each other. That's the way you get around like scheduling and stuff. But financially, I think that's the biggest thing. And I think, Crimson Brand Partners is the biggest part of it. Like, are they doing what they need to do in terms of helping Utah max out the revenue that they can possibly generate? Because if they are, then I think Utah's probably in a better position to be able to stay afloat for those 5 years. But if they're not, then yeah, I don't know if it's worth it. Like, I know Utah fans are probably like screaming at their radios or computers or whatever they're listening to this on right now and being like, but the Big Ten, I understand that. But at the same time, like, the long-term goal shouldn't be outweighed by a short-term gain. I think that's the big thing is, like, short-term, like, yeah, in that moment, the Big Ten offers and says, hey, like, we want you to come, but 5 years you have to wait. Are you going to be able to stay afloat for those 5 years? That's the biggest thing financially, because, you're seeing teams across the country or athletic departments across the country start cutting out those Olympic sports. Like, the Olympic sports matter at Utah. Utah takes a lot of pride in producing Olympians, no matter what sport it is. And if you start cutting Olympic sports, that's a short-term solution, but it's still going to be a long-term problem. So that was kind of a roundabout answer to say, who knows? I think a lot of it's just depend on Crimson Brand Partners and where Utah's at financially. But I also just have a hard time believing the Big Ten and the SEC are going to sign off on this thing. And if they don't, like, it's just going to create chaos. Like, just be prepared for ultimate chaos in college athletics.
Again. We've already had it a few times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, again. But, like, I feel like it's going to be, like, a million times worse this time, because you're just going to see, like, any team with a pulse trying to get into their, like, the good graces of the Big Ten and the SEC. Like, you're just going to see it. Like, obviously Utah, I think Stanford and Cal would probably throw their hat in the rings as well. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Arizona schools, Kansas, the schools that, have one or two sports that would prove, big value to these conferences and stuff. Like, obviously San Francisco is a massive media market, which might, turn the tides for those two schools. Kansas has basketball, Arizona has basketball, and football seems to be on the up. Arizona State football, like, it's going to be insane. It's going to be chaotic. I am slightly interested in it, but also, like, slightly not interested in it at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I know of just how chaotic the last time of realignment was. So, we'll see. I have a hard time believing that this bill is going to pass, just because, the SEC and the Big Ten are just digging their heels in and stuff. And yeah, it's not fun. But at the same time, I'm glad I'm not in those rooms, in those conversations.
Same. Sammy, you're the best. Look forward to seeing you up there at practices and such with media availability. And thanks for jumping on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, OC. I appreciate coming on again.
That's Sammy Mora, Utes Insider, friend of the program. They're doing really good work over there at Ute Zone, so get on board. It's now on 3, by the way. They're under that on 3 umbrella. So
speaking of realignment,
S_Mora on 3 is the new Twitter handle, if you're not already following Sammy Mora.
Little little Utes recruiting publication realignment going on. As seems like a lot of those publications are going away from 24/7. Ute Zone, one of them recently moving to On3.
All right, the Daily Dump is coming next. We got a lot to get to, actually, in this Daily Dump. The Utah Mammoth with a big extension for one of the players you know. And Gordy Chiesa mentioned this when we were talking to him, a Wilt Chamberlain warm-up jacket story that you're going to want to hear. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. After I tell you this story, everyone's going to run to the DI or to Savers or to the Salvation Army store or whatever. So this is legitimately wild. There's a young man who is in the he's in the thrifting business. You know how this is like a hobby for a lot of people? You go and you find vintage clothes. There are some people who like actually know what they're looking at when they go and they sift through the bins at these like secondhand stores, or they go and you're pushing the musty old jackets on the rack at the DI, and you're just like, oh wow, that one is kind of rare. That one is something. Well, this young man he's a teenager from Portland, Oregon. 19 years old. His name is Quinn Brown. He went to a Goodwill store and he saw someone like looking at something and he caught a little glimpse and he was just like, that looks like a Lakers thing. And he found a 1972 game-worn NBA Finals Wilt Chamberlain warm-up jacket at a Goodwill in Portland somehow. Nobody knows how it got there. Okay? He bought this thing for, I will give you 1,000 of your own bonus points, James, if you could tell me how much he had to pay for this at a Goodwill in Portland.
You know how many of these kind of jackets I can get with 1,000 James Peterson bonus points?
Yes.
This is a lot of stakes here. How much he got it for?
How much did he buy it for? At a Goodwill. Of course, they have no idea that it's a game worn. They just think it's an old Lakers jacket.
Donated.
Like a donated vintage Laker jacket.
Who donated that? Is like, wow. $15.
He bought it for $3.
$3.
And I think with tax, it came to like $3.17 or something.
This is your kind of story, by the way, OC.
It's my favorite thing in the world.
You love these deals.
Dude, if you could find a deal like this. So he picks it out, and he's just like, oh, my gosh, this is Chamberlain on it. This is Wilt Chamberlain's jacket. And so he's like, and you can, apparently there's a service. There's like a photo service where if you find something, you can have it kind of like authenticated. You could take pictures of it. You could plug it into this database, and they will be like, oh, yeah, this is where he wore it. This is when he wore it. It's like a thing.
It's like
right?
Take a picture of it, and you can get it authenticated pretty quickly.
Right.
Okay.
So the whole deal with these like antiques or memorabilia things is they have to be authenticated, right? And even when I was a kid and you were buying things or you were finding things, like if you caught a ball at a game when I was a kid, they didn't find you and give you a certificate of authenticity that was a real piece of Major League Baseball memorabilia.
Someone from the memorabilia authorities running into the stands. Hey, here you go.
They do that now.
Yeah.
They did not when I was a kid, right?
Oh.
And so now every piece of memorabilia that you buy has a certificate of authenticity. There's provenance. You can figure out where it came from, and it's traceable. Not the case back in 1972, obviously. So this kid figures it out. Oh, my gosh, look what I found. This is a Wilt Chamberlain jacket. He posts a picture of it online, and Sotheby's, the auction site, contacts him and is just like, how about you can sign that to us? We'll auction it off for you. Of course, he has to pay a fee. I have no idea what the percentage on that fee is. But he ends up selling it for $89,600 at auction. A $3 investment turns into $89,600. Now, let's say Sotheby's takes 10%. Hopefully, it's not more than that. This kid is still making $80,000 on a jacket that he found by going into a Goodwill store. How cool is that?
That's awesome. By the way, 72, not exactly a insignificant year in Lakers history. Like, that was Jerry West's only NBA championship that year. Wilt Chamberlain's only one as a Laker. At the time they set the NBA record for wins
games.
For 69 wins. That's obviously been topped a couple of times now since then. Like, that is a significant year in NBA history, and particularly Lakers history. So to have, not just to get if it were just a Wilt Chamberlain warm-up jacket that he wore in the NBA Finals for the Los Angeles Lakers, no matter if they win or lose, that's going to be valuable. It's probably even more valuable because that was such a special year. as well. So that's awesome. I'm so jealous that I haven't been able to just stumble upon a piece of cool memorabilia. I feel like OC, I would, as much as a monetary gain that is to sell it, I would have a hard time parting with something like that if I just I basically found it like $20. You find $20 on the ground and be like, no, this is mine. I want to keep this.
Yeah.
Like, that's really cool. Then you hear it can go for $90,000. You're like, okay, I need $90,000 though.
He's 19 years old, and he's like,
that's a nest egg for him.
That's awesome. You're 19, and now you've got
go put a down payment on a house with that right now.
Seriously, he's got and this is what he does. By the way, this kid, he has like a vintage shop on an app called Depop. I'm not familiar with Depop, but he's a thrifter. He goes and he finds stuff and he puts it online and he sells it, and that's how he was found. When he was figuring out how authentic this thing was, he went and looked for other similar jackets, and he was like, I found basically the same jacket sold for $50,000 previously. So he was all excited. And while I can't verify this 100%, it looks like Jack Nicholson bought this jacket.
Really?
The Laker fan, the iconic
Someone
Laker
named
fan.
Jack Nicholson? Is it like Seinfeld, John Voight's car situation?
He went on a sports talk, a midday sports talk radio show in Portland, and they asked him about it, and the host referenced that, so Jack Nicholson bought this jacket. That must be a pretty cool finish to the story for you. So that's the only thing I can see.
All right.
But how cool is that, man? $90,000 out of a $3 fine. And by the way, I lied. The final price was $3.07. So
that ate into his profits a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
that kills you.
OC, where do you stand on that? If you ever stumble upon a treasure, memorabilia treasure at a DI, at a Goodwill, wherever, would you be, let's try to turn a profit on this, or would you want to keep that for a while?
I think I probably would end up keeping it for a short time, enjoying it, taking a bunch of photos of it, show all my friends and family that I think will care about it, and then I'll sell it.
That's good middle ground.
I think that for me,
short, like few months.
Yeah, like up to a year, maybe.
Yeah.
Like let all the sports fan and for me, it would have to be a pretty lofty, amazing find, right? But I'm always going to have that story no matter what. I have my own thrifting stories that are not Wilt Chamberlain jackets that to me are precious because of the story, not necessarily because of the object itself.
I feel like that's why people probably continue to thrift. It's a hook for you. Like, man, the stories you get out of doing this, like you chase that every time you go to a thrift store.
Right.
Right?
That whole, it's the reason I watch American Pickers. You know what I mean? They just go into random barns in the middle of nowhere and they find these priceless items, and you're just like, that's really cool. I want that. I want to do that.
Yeah. R.I.P. to the star American Pickers, right? Didn't he pass?
Did Frank pass?
There's one of the guys passed away in the last year or two.
Oh no. You're about to ruin my day.
I'm sorry. We've addressed this before on the air, OC.
I think you might be right.
I thought I was just doing a courtesy.
You're right. Frank Fritz.
Peace. Yeah.
Frank Fritz.
We miss you, Frank.
I miss
OC misses you.
I told you. I met Frank, and
that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
In Iowa, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. We have been down that road before. Brain fart for me for a second. Okay. So that's a happy, fun, cool, amazing story for this kid out of Portland. Wilt Chamberlain warm-up jacket, buys it for $3.07, sells it for just under $90,000. This happened. This is wild, James. I know you saw this because we were on air yesterday, okay? And we have a television in our studio. Right now it's Little League World Series, Little League Softball World Series. Yesterday we're watching, and Ryan Clark is on television.
Yeah.
Ryan Clark is doing a live show on ESPN yesterday during our show.
Spence brought this up too on on his show because he was like, I was just watching him earlier today.
He was effectively fired during that show as they're going through a bunch of cuts, layoffs, downsizing at ESPN, because why would you do that? You're jerks. And it didn't used to be this way at ESPN. It is now, since in the last 10 years or so, they've just done this seemingly every year.
They've lost so much heritage, traditional great talent. Jeff Van Gundy on the NBA side was one of the casualties of this. Keyshawn Johnson was a casualty of this, absolutely.
Carl Ravitch got fired today. He called a game last night. Ryan Clark.
I was watching the Phillies-Dodgers game last night. Ravitch, David Ross, Eduardo Perez. I don't know if his longtime Sunday Night Baseball, and now they do a couple games midweek. Eduardo Perez, I don't know if he's on his way out too. Those two have been a staple the last half a decade plus. Like that was wild to me that I heard that this morning. Like he was just on the air, and like not even 24 hours ago.
Look, I've been part of these unfortunate happenstances in sports media where you get fired and you got to find a new gig and stuff like that. It's part and parcel to the industry. The fact that it happened while he was on air, the decision was made to inform him that he was being downsized while he was on air, and then he didn't finish the show. He of course, was just like, oh, really? Okay, I'm done then.
Just like tarmacked, if you will. Just taken off set.
So
talking about Ryan Clark now.
I'm talking about Ryan Clark. He started the show. It's the equivalent of, like, we're halfway through, a little over halfway through today's show, right? If in the next break you were just like, hey, by the way, we're firing you tomorrow.
Stay tuned.
It's the equivalent of that, which is
it
brutal.
Really is. Like it's
really,
can't even
really
let
tough.
the guy finish his assignment, the day's assignment for you.
And the justification that they gave, the explanation, because of course everyone was just like, that is unprofessional, that is brutal. Why would you do that? Why would you have him on air and then minutes later he's fired? And ESPN's justification of it was actually pretty interesting, because there's all of these reporters now, right? These scoopers that were worried, had the information that the downsizing was happening. It's been kind of anticipated, kind of expected, quarterly earnings, et cetera, right? And ESPN was like, well, we were worried he was going to find out by opening a tweet and seeing that he'd been downsized
before we could actually fire him.
So we wanted to be the ones who actually told him. So their justification was, we wanted to do like the correct professional thing.
Yeah.
And obviously the argument to that is just like, well, why you should have brought him in before the show then.
Yeah, like I don't know if you like don't put him on air that day, or like be very clear, like, we really want you to do one last show. And let him, and maybe that's what it was. Like maybe ESPN was not anticipating that he would just walk off the set, but you can't really blame a guy in that situation.
Heck
like,
no.
I'm not employed by you anymore. I'm not finishing your show.
It is general practice that unless it's a retirement, if you're being fired, they don't let you go back on air.
Yeah.
Which is an old thing. Now you can do the exact same thing by just pulling out your phone. And if you want to burn it down, you can, right?
Yeah.
If Ryan Clark wanted to tell a bunch of tales out of school and he wanted to get mad.
Good point. That puts the company is potentially very exposed, way too vulnerable, way too at risk to say, yeah, go ahead and finish your show.
I mean, I've been part of this. I've been part of this in radio where they call you in after your show's over.
Yeah.
They don't say tomorrow's going to be your last show, because they don't want you coming on the air and saying, oh, by the way,
right,
this place sucks. Oh, by the way,
can't have that bad PR.
James
out there.
Peterson beats me up every day, right? Allegedly. Like they
don't for throwing that word in there at the end.
So it's sort of corporate practice that you don't, and like,
yeah.
They walk you out of the building. They have the dumb security guy come and stand there while you get the stuff off your desk.
Dan Patrick has talked about he got that treatment when he left ESPN, and it's like, I'm Dan Patrick. Like, why are you? I am Sports Center. Why do I need to be walked out by security?
You know, it was really funny is that happened to me, and they were like, it's this guy who is not in the building every day. It's like an off-duty cop that they call to like handle these types of situations or whatever. And he's standing there and waiting for me to like pack up my stuff. And because I'm a jerk, what's going through my mind, James, is I'm just like, if I wanted to freak out right now, what are you gonna do? Like
similar energy to your bad neighbor. You're looking at the Ring camera and be like, if that wasn't there, what would I do?
Well, I'm looking at this guy. This is years and years ago. I'm looking at this guy and I'm just like, if I decide that I want to cause a scene right now, you cannot do anything. Like, if they're really worried about a scene being caused, an issue happening, which of course they didn't have to worry about. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to burn bridges. I'm not going to act like a psycho. But I'm just like, why do they think this rent-a-cop is the right thing for them right now?
He can't stop you.
Like,
yeah.
This guy's not going to do anything.
Oh, man.
Anyway, it was funny. But it was not funny for Ryan Clark. It's not funny for anyone who is being laid off by ESPN today. It is, unfortunately, it's part of the business. And if there's a silver lining, I'm usually not the silver lining guy, but if there's a silver lining, it's that it does open opportunities for other people, for younger people, right? Because all of this is cost cutting, right? So like there are literally thousands of folks who would do anything, myself included, who would do anything to have an opportunity to call games, call college football games, call Major League Baseball games, call whatever.
Be a studio analyst like Ryan Clark is.
And when you get to a point where like Ryan Clark's making a couple $1 million a year, whatever, they might be like, we don't think you're worth that anymore. Now the next guy, they save money on that guy.
Yeah, he's going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars instead of millions.
If you look at who hosts SportsCenter now,
oh my gosh,
it's like a bunch of 28-year-olds.
And it's people that, all due respect to them, you've never heard of them.
Yeah, exactly. Now, to be fair, Scott Van Pelt was that at some point.
Yeah, he's like the only one you've heard of. Yeah.
They were like all those guys. Linda Cohn at some point was just like a random person.
And moved up the ranks. Yeah.
And you move up the ranks. So like you got to give him credit. You got to allow, you never want to be the person to follow the iconic person, but you'll take that job if you're a young person on the climb. And it's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. And sorry that you got pipped on your own show, Ryan Clark. That's tough.
It's too bad we don't have time for anything but this one very important thing to fit in Daily Dump, OC, and it's that the Red Sox are winning games. They're 14 straight wins. Everyone cares about this, right? They're about to go for their 15th straight win, which would be tie a franchise record. They play the Orioles tonight. That's the most important story in sports today and on the show. Absolutely.
So this coming in from Sam, I have to do this because it pertains to our Wilt Chamberlain thrifting story. This is wonderful here.
Shout out to Sam.
Shout out to Sam on the text line. So, and yes, part of the story with the Wilt Chamberlain jacket is this kid saw somebody else had the jacket in their hands and put it back in the bin. That's how we saw it.
Oh, okay.
So, like, someone had it in their possession first, and then was just like, nah, I'm not going to buy this.
Didn't realize what they had.
I don't have $3. Put it back.
I hate the Lakers. Put it back.
Yeah. So this is from Sam. I had a buddy with an exact similar story at the Goodwill bins here in Salt Lake City. Someone had and threw back a game-used Celtics Rajon Rondo jersey.
Oh.
The game-used jerseys now have authenticity tags on them so you can authenticate. No idea how it got there. My personal best find was at Deseret Industries. I paid $5 for a game-used Brandon Burton number 27 jersey. Long story, but I used to work in the athletics department of Utah. I knew Brandon, no certificate of authenticity, but I would take his word for it that it was a jersey from the Brandon Burton kick block of 2010. I gave it back to Brandon as opposed to selling it. If anyone should have it, it was, oh my gosh, Sam.
That is so cool.
I just got chills. Literally. That play is one of the top 5 most iconic moments for me in Utah football history. Of my own personal memories of the Utah football BYU rivalry, that is one of the most distinct, because I've told the story on the air before. I was fighting with hundreds of people at a Washington, D.C. bar, sports bar, to keep that game on the television. They all wanted other games on the TV, and I'm sitting at a sports bar watching it, and the bartender's like, I got to change this, man. And I'm like, dude, do not. And I don't have a tab because I don't drink, right? So they're profiting nothing off of me. I'm like, I will take care of you. Leave this game on.
Yeah, you're just like tipping him.
I'm like, I was fighting this out with hundreds of Washingtonites, and I was devastated. I thought the game was over, and then it was Brandon Burton's block, and I'm celebrating by myself, freaking out in – anyway. The fact that you had that jersey, the fact that that jersey ended up at the DI, what the crap? Brandon Burton, why did it end up there? I'm glad you gave it back to him. That's really, really cool. Like, that's elite. I was going to say, if you still have that, I will buy that from you for our ESPN 700 studio.
Absolutely.
Brandon Burton, if you're listening and you still have that, I still will buy it from you. If you don't want it anymore, you don't need it anymore. That's Sam, thank you for that story. That's an incredible story.
That's like got to be one of the best local sports memorabilia stories that you pick up at a Goodwill, in this case, at a DI, or it was a DI that he found this. The fact that, how random is it that a Rajon Rondo game-worn Celtics jersey ended up at a Goodwill in Salt Lake City?
Like, you know the story.
The part of that story.
You know the story of the flu game shoes, where the ball boy had the flu game shoes and he ended up selling them later on? Like, that's still a wonderful story, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it was in Salt Lake City.
That it was in Salt Lake, and he recognized these are Michael Jordan's playoff shoes. I'm going to keep these. I'm going to put them in a safety deposit box, that kind of thing. And then it paid off years later. How does something like that ever end up in the DI? Or in the Goodwill bin? Was
this before or after Danny Ainge was hired by the Utah Jazz? Did he donate it to Goodwill?
Danny Ainge just cleaning out all the Celtics stuff he's got. He's just like, I don't want this anymore. Rondo's out, he's been on 15 teams.
He's a Laker champion now. I hate him.
I'm sick of this Rondo crap taking up space in my office. I'm blown away by that. I love that. I like estate sales, DI, Goodwill, Salvation Army. You can find some absolute gems. Random antique stores. The popularity of the television shows surrounding this, Storage Wars and all that, they've kind of made it harder to find the diamonds in the rough, the little gems. So the fact that people are still able to pick those little diamonds out is it's encouraging. It's good to hear. That's the Daily Dump, brought to you by our friends over at Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Look for the truck with the duct. They'll solve all your homeowner problems, almost all of them, at least. All right, if you have not yet played Stansbury Park Golf Course, how about this weekend? Head on I-80, straight out to Tooele. It's a nice little gateway into the Tooele area, right? Go check out the restaurants. Go check out the wilderness, the wildlife out there. Maybe just drive around. Maybe you could relocate to somewhere that's a little bit quieter. But let Stansbury Park Golf Course be your gateway. It's a perfect combination of a challenging course where you're playing the right pace because it's never crowded, and, of course, the price is always right. $45 for a round on weekdays, $50 for a round on weekends. Great rates, gorgeous greens, minutes away on I-80, totally worth it. Book your tee time now at stansburypark.gov/golf course. That's stansburypark.gov/golf course. All right, hour number 3 begins with the Utah Athletics Hall of Famer, Amy Hogue, Utah softball coach, also a member of the 1991 Utah softball team, just named to the Hall of Fame. We'll talk with her about that honor, about the Utah Talons, sharing Dumke, and all of that. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome into hour number 3. We're going to talk a little Utah softball here with Amy Hogue, the coach of your Utah softball team. The Hall of Fame class for the Utah Athletics Hall of Fame this year includes the 1991 team that participated in the longest game in softball history, in NCAA softball history. I'm not going to regale you with the details. Hopefully, if I'm lucky, I can get Amy Hogue to do that at some point during this conversation. Amy Hogue joins us now on the Sean O'Connell Show. Coach, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Sean. I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing all right. How did you find out that you and your 1991 teammates were going to be inducted into the Utah Athletics Hall of Fame?
Well, believe it or not, a lot of my youths have a text thread that includes Coach Evans, Coach Joe Evans, and she announced it to us on the text thread, so all of us got to hear at the same time from her.
Wow, that's really cool. So a bunch of your teammates are still on a text thread together. The text thread would not have started back in 1991, but the team of 1991 is on that text thread. That's pretty cool. There's some longevity with that relationship, Coach.
Yeah, not everybody, but most everybody. I mean, we find each other in different cities. Hey, is anyone around to watch the football game? We're in Notre Dame, or how about, meeting at USC? The Utes are playing on the weekend. Like, we'll meet at football games. We are Utes through and through. And so, yeah, those of us that have been doing life together for years are part of this. And it's a lot of times Ute stuff and a lot of times just life stuff. Announcements of things, good or bad. So yeah, through and through, we're teammates and friends. That's
really cool. As I was, kind of looking up the history of this team, came across on the official UtahUtes.com website, and we were just talking earlier today. There's some great vintage memorabilia stories out there where people are finding someone found a Brandon Burton game-worn jersey at the DI, and there was a Wilt Chamberlain jacket. I don't know if you saw that story that got sold after being found at a Goodwill. And there's this awesome picture of your 1991 Utah softball team in some really slick unis with the Utah script across the chest, and the numbers are kind of down on the belly instead of being on the back or on the shoulder, something like that. Do you have any of this gear left, Coach? Is any of this in a closet somewhere?
I do not, no, and I really hope nobody does. I mean, that stuff was pretty trashed. I'm pretty sure we wore the same uniforms all 4 years, and we probably had 2 uniforms, a red one and a white one, and that was it. So, yeah, no, we probably wore them completely out, and they have holes in them, But, yeah, I guarantee nobody has one of those. But we're going to do throwbacks. Maybe we'll do some throwbacks.
Got to do some throwbacks. Shamel, who's on the team with you, obviously, she's got some clout. You two together could make this throwback happen. We could recreate this picture I'm looking at from the 1991 Utah softball team.
Nice.
All right.
Nice. Back then, they probably handed them down from the baseball team, so that's probably why the number was tucked into my pants. That used to happen, I'm sure. So,
I always.
I don't know. Charmel will make it happen, I'm sure.
The kids these days, Coach, they have no idea what it was like to be a student athlete back in the day. I was up there in the early 2000s. And our football helmets didn't even match the color of our jerseys. It was like the red didn't match. And telling the players that now, when they have a practice helmet, they have a black helmet, they have a hand-painted helmet, they have a red helmet, and they have a white helmet, they cannot relate at all.
They can't. And they have a different helmet for every game. And, yeah, it's different, and it's fun. It's fun to be a part of it then and now. Each generation has their own stories.
All right. Before we get to the now of Utah softball, if you don't mind, for those who have not heard the stories, those who are uninitiated, take us through a 56-inning doubleheader for the 1991 WAC championship, playing softball through the night against Creighton, back-to-back games, just your memories of that, the grueling grind of 2 games that ended up being, however long that was, hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 12 hours. If anyone was counting, we started at 6 p.m. ish the night before and ended about 6 a.m. The sun was coming up. The grass was wet from the morning dew. The birds were singing. It was nuts. I actually talked to the Creighton coach, and they're having a get together this fall with their team, and I really think we should crash their party, and everyone should get together and tell the stories, because everybody tells different stories. What I remember about it was, the first game, we were the undefeated team, so as long as we win, we're in, and we lost, so we had to turn around and play another game. And I remember in the second game having we're a team that has a lot of superstitions, and so you got to stand here, you got to do this, and at that point, we'd gone through everything we could think of to try to get a run, and so we changed uniforms, like in the middle of the inning, in the middle of the dugout. Like, everyone just swapped uniforms. But it was crazy. Charmel was by far our best player, and got 7 hits in the first game. She was like 7 for 14 or something. And it's not like we weren't getting hits. Both teams got lots of hits, but they beat us in the first game. We turned around and beat them in the second game, but it took 12 hours to get it done. And I remember calling my parents because they weren't there, and you had to call from like a payphone, no lie. So you had to call. I told them I'd call them as soon as the game was over, and they were pretty mad when I called in the morning and said, "You forgot to call us." And I said, "No, we literally just ended." So, but it was nuts. Their pitcher threw 51 of the 56, so I'd say
Whoa.
she was the superstar. Kelly Brookhart, lefty, and she was their best hitter too. So between her and Charmel, both lefty hitters, there were some superstars on the field that day, and it was definitely either our catcher or their catcher that squatted for 12 hours, or the pitchers that threw all night. But yeah, we got it done, and it's been a fun story to tell.
It's really unbelievable, especially now, like you said, you've stayed involved. You're a coach now, and like, this would not be asked of modern day athletes, right? I mean, there's got to be rules against this. If a game goes past a certain time or a certain number of innings or whatever, you got to like pause it and pick it up the next day. Back then, they're just like, yeah, let them play till you find a result.
Absolutely. There would be so many rules against everything that happened that night, and I don't want to hear all the stories, but it did feel a little bit dangerous. I remember our trainer actually went down. She was the one whose eyes rolled into the back of her head, and she needed treatment because she kind of lost it at one point.
Oh, no.
But yeah, it was, when the trainer goes down, you probably should shut it down. But the commissioner was there at the game. So in championship play, they don't do what's called the international tiebreaker rule, which means that, if you're tied at a certain inning, then you start with a runner at second, and it usually gets the game to end a little quicker. And she was there, and she's like, nope, in championship play, we don't do it that way. And we actually did do it in that 25th inning of that second game. They started with, she goes, I don't care what the rules say, I'm the commissioner, and it's 6 a.m., and we're starting with a runner at second, and we happen to win it in that inning. So there's a little controversy over that, but both teams agreed to it, and yeah, it got it done really quick. So, but I don't know if it'll happen again. I sure hope not. Even if there aren't any rules, I hope it doesn't happen again.
Well, I don't know much, but I can confidently say that we are never again going to get that many innings played over a 12-hour span in college softball. Yeah. When the rule change happened in the second game, was there any objection? Mm-hmm. Was Creighton just like, no, you can't do that now? Or was everyone so exhausted and so just fatigued by that marathon that even they were just like, all right, fine, just let's figure out who's going to win?
Well, I certainly don't remember the conversation happening, but what I do know is they had to agree. We both had to agree on it happening, and I don't think there was a doubt in anyone's mind. It was just the commissioner making the decision, and we said yes, whatever it takes to have this thing end. I remember at one point, and I'm competitive as they come, and I honestly didn't care if we won or lost. I just wanted to be done. I remember hitting every emotion, and I was a freshman. We had 2 seniors on the team that just, I mean, we all had no quit in us, but that was pretty extreme. I had sprained my ankle like 3 days prior, so everyone was taped up like over top of their uniform. By the time it was all over, we had ankles taped over cleats, and yeah, it was pretty ugly, but yeah, we got it done and ended up going to College Station and upsetting them to go to the World Series. So it actually spurred us into a really magical ending to our season. So it wasn't just that game; it was it qualified for us for postseason. We went to regionals and upset a former champion. They had won the World Series. They were a front runner, and we upset them at their place and went to the Final 8. So it was pretty magical first year for me in my career.
Utah softball coach Amy Hogue is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. She and her teammates from this legendary 1991, not only Extreme Doubleheader, but the WAC Championship and College World Series appearance, they are going into the Athletics Hall of Fame this season. That'll be week 3, if I'm not mistaken, of the football season. And do you expect that everyone's going to show up for the actual ceremony, induction, the get-together, Coach?
I do think everyone's going to show up. It was fun because I got the opportunity I nominated myself to reach out to everyone because I have all their numbers, and I just reached out to everyone and made sure they knew about it. And surprisingly, it didn't take that long because a bunch of us were on that text thread, and the few that weren't, they answered right away. And honestly, we only had 14 on our roster, so it really isn't going to take that much to get everyone there. I couldn't believe that we only had 14, but we did. It was a squad of 14. So,
wow.
Yeah, I'd bet money that everyone shows up.
How aware are your current players of that 1991 season? Because like in sports talk radio, we get to this thing where if we don't know the history, we familiarize ourselves with the history of the programs, right? And the recruiting pitches and the legacy and all that kind of stuff. And then you talk to families and you talk to kids who are 17, 18, 19 years old, and they're just like, man, I don't even know what happened in the Sugar Bowl year for football. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? So 1991, none of your gals were alive, obviously. Their parents were, maybe. But, like, how aware are they of that insane doubleheader and your championships and things like that?
Right. That's a good question. Any of the teams that involved me, I haven't really talked about it that much because that's awkward, right? To talk about you and your team. But I have done quite a bit to integrate our alum with our current teams. And I do it in a lot of really odd ways, fun ways, I think. They probably think odd, so I said odd. But trying to, each year I'll make them connect with someone that wore the same number as them and write them a letter. Or we do a fitness challenge in the fall. We call it 1176, which is the distance between our stadium and the Hall of Fame Stadium, which is where they play the World Series. So 1,176 miles. So we call this fitness test 1176, and we match up our current players with an alum. The alum do not have to run it, but they do help them, cheer them on, and help them count their reps for this magical day in their lives that they do in the fall. So we connect them that way also. And last year, we celebrated our 50th season of Utah softball, and we had a ginormous event where all kinds of alum came back, and we had a banquet and a lot of mingling between our players. So I don't know if they talked about the all-nighter game or not, but they certainly know a lot of the people that I've played with and that were involved in that team, and a lot of them come out and watch games. So I do know they know a bunch of alum because I've made that happen and make them do that and appreciate where things were and why they have it so great now and why they should be grateful. But I don't know if they know much about the game. So maybe I'll sit down and make them watch it one day.
Make them watch the entire doubleheader, all 12 hours. That's its own fitness test, Coach. You're just like, all right, you got to stay awake. You got to watch the whole thing. I had to play in it for 12 hours. You could watch it for 12 hours.
I had to watch it. Yeah, they do have it. Apparently, it's on YouTube somewhere. I have not watched it. I know I was the last out of the first game, which is heartbreaking. So I don't want them to have to watch that. But I do think that making them watch it would probably cost me an entire week of practice because of the allotment of hours that we get. So I don't think I want to do that, but maybe some of the highlights.
Really incredible story. Let's talk about the direction, what's going on in softball right now. How much Talon's softball were you able to take in? They share your home field, and they're off to their own championship competition and Athletes Unlimited softball league. So how much were you able to see of that?
A lot, actually. They played most of their home games at the front end of the season for them. So they were done with their last home game July 4th. So I was actually in town a lot recruiting from the portal and hosting some of those recruits. It was a nice little way to show off our field when we have the best talent in the world down there playing on the field they would play on. So it showed really well. So I saw quite a bit. I bought 3 season tickets of my own so that I could have a seat. I didn't know quite where to sit. I hadn't really sat in the stands before, so I had to ask some friends and family. But I bought 3 tickets, and I actually sat and watched a handful of home games, and now we're out recruiting nationals this week. So I'm actually in California right now and heading to Indiana tomorrow for the other nationals. But yeah, the Talons are in the championship this weekend. They'll start on Saturday.
They are, and we talked with Coach Bear yesterday on the show, and obviously former Ute is on that squad, so we're hoping they can go back-to-back. They won the championship last year in the inaugural season. That was before they had settled down here in Salt Lake City, and now even more reason for us to root for them and hope they can go back-to-back. Are you good at being a fan? Can you sit and watch a softball game and just enjoy it, or does the competitor and the coach in you take over?
Ooh, I'd say it depends. It depends on the game. I'm a mother of 3, and I think when I'm in the stands, when it's my own kids, I'm really good at being a fan. I enjoy just playing the mom role, and I think I got really good at it because I wasn't willing to. I didn't ever coach my kids, and that was precious to me to just be the mom. So I worked hard. I learned how to do that for my parents really well. But when I'm just watching like the Talons and there's definitely a lot of people around me that I like to talk and shop with, and I'd throw it down and in here, or I think they should pinch the metal and roll it up instead. And yeah, I'm probably doing a little bit of that, but usually I'm partaking in a beverage or two, so I probably don't know what I'm talking about.
So interestingly enough, the Soccer World Cup sparked a lot of conversation about youth sports and talent development in the United States. And obviously it started with soccer because we're not very good at it as a nation compared to some others. And then it expands. That conversation expands as more and more parents get involved, and they're just like, yeah, it's hard to have elite level soccer players because you got to be a millionaire to afford the travel teams. And, you've got similar situations. Elite softball is expensive and crazy. Volleyball, expensive and crazy. Football used to be a sport only for the fall. Now you got leagues and 7-on-7s and private quarterback coaching and all this crazy stuff. And youth sports is changed very drastically since I was a kid, and you just signed up for your rec league, baseball during baseball season and football during football season and wrestling or basketball. And you're recruiting these athletes. So it matters a lot more to you than it does to me, at least for now. I got 3 girls of my own that are eventually going to have to figure this stuff out. They're young enough now. We don't have to worry yet. But, Coach, I'm asking because, you're getting players out of these elite clubs, and Do you want them to be multi-sport athletes? If they are multi-sport athletes, does it take away from the technique they need to have by the time they get to college to play softball? We don't have many opportunities to know what the philosophy is from somebody who's actually recruiting.
I love that question. I'm old school on both ends of it. I wanted my kids to play all the sports, and I want all my players to play all the sports, and I played all the sports. I think it's important, mostly for their full body training. You know, when they get to me, they will probably play a different position than they used to play, and I want them to be able to move their bodies in different ways. They're getting so specialized that they play for space, and that's all they do, and it's not good for them. I might need them to play third or right field, and so I think also having an escape from playing first base every day is playing volleyball and doing something different and making new friends and appreciating the sport by taking a break from it. Your body needs a break from it. Your mind needs a break from it. I'm convinced it's the way that we should be doing it. And are there some that just don't like any of the other sports? Yes, but most are told that they can't. And that's hard for me. So I like for them to, which means, yes, they'll take a few less reps during the fall, but I also know if they're playing volleyball in the fall and softball in the spring that they're not going to be as burnout maybe of softball when they get to me. I equate it. I know this is random, but I always think of random thoughts, and I'm going to share it. When you want to be a doctor, and I know because my brother's a doctor, you can be whatever major you want in your first 4 years. You just have to take the prereqs for medical school and then get into medical school because they'll teach you how to be a doctor when you get to medical school. And to me, I feel like it's the same thing. You need to play enough softball that you're elite at it. And for everybody, that's different. And then when you get there, be ready to do nothing but softball. And I think those that played a lot of sports have been my most versatile kids. They've gotten hurt less, and they've enjoyed their entire career and haven't had to worry about as much burnout. So I'm going for that.
I thought you would answer at least somewhat that way because most of the coaches that we do get an opportunity, they want multi-sport athletes. And so my big question now is one I don't even think you'll be able to answer, but like, where is the disconnect between parents and the coaches who are actually – because every parent is just like, I'm going to get my kid into volleyball camp or softball camp or soccer camp when they're 11 because that's going to turn into a scholarship when they're 18. And the coaches that are actually handing out the scholarships are like, no, let them play all these different sports. But then the parents are like, nope, I'm going to specialize them. Yeah. Where is this disconnect happening?
Oh, how much time do we have? You want to talk about the disconnect between parents and coaches? I don't think we have enough time. I think my battery's going to die on my phone. They don't believe us, I think, and they just want to control what they can, and that's what the piece they think they can control. And I do think the coaches, the travel ball coaches, are part of that too.
Sure.
And the volleyball coaches and the high school coaches, because they're the ones saying no. You can't play the other sports. So it's probably more the travel ball coaches and the parents versus the college coaches. So, yeah, there's some disconnect. But, yeah, it feels too vulnerable and scary to let them play all the sports, and especially if they think that it's going to cost that scholarship that they want their kid to get at Division I level.
Crazy. But, yeah, we'll find time and we'll get deeper into that conversation when we don't have to do it on a phone because the battery will run out. There's so much nuance to it, Coach.
And when your girls get older, we can chat about it.
Yes. 7, 4, and 2 right now. So I need you to stick around for another at least 11 years. All right?
Okay. No problem. I love it. Yeah.
Coach, we'll be up there, so I'll come say hi at your Hall of Fame induction. Congratulations to you, your team, all the success, and thank you so much for giving us some time today.
Thank you so much. I enjoy the time, and I appreciate your support.
That's Amy Hogue, Utah softball coach, member of the 1991 Utah softball team, just named to the Hall of Fame. this should be like some homework we have to do, right? 56 innings. The longest game in softball history was the first of a doubleheader. They played a 31-inning game. It ends, it's a 6 p.m. start. It ends just after midnight. They take a 20-minute break, and then they start the second game. And that game ends at 6:08 a.m.
So they're both 6-hour games, 5+ hour games.
The second game was 25 innings.
And listen, you did a good job of pulling back the curtain a little bit for our listeners as to why we seem to be informed about everything, even by just a little bit. We have to be a quick study. We have to know at least a basic knowledge of the news items that come out. A lot of times we learn it from the news articles. In this case, that's what it was for me, reading about, like, I see 1991 softball team. Why? What's significant about the 1991 softball team?
What are we celebrating about them?
And Paul,
a lot of things.
And Paul Kirk, head of communications, who does a lot of the writing and sends out a lot of the emails on this. Sent out the email on this sort of thing. He wrote a really good summary that tells you, okay, this is why the 1991 softball team is notable. And so we had a few days to study that a little bit, OC, which is why you did such a great job with Coach Hogue just now. But also, I thought I knew all the basics that I would need to know to sound intelligent about it. But then Amy informs us that was in a WAC championship. That was in a WAC tournament. That was for the WAC championship. I did not know that there was those kind of stakes.
Yeah.
On that doubleheader.
It was a doubleheader. They had to win one of those games against Creighton. Creighton won the first game, which, by the way, I think they won 1-0 in the first game.
Oh, that is 31 innings and only one run.
31 innings for a run. Yeah, they won the opener 1-0 in 31 innings, and that forced a second game in that championship round. 20-minute break, finishing at 6:08. The Utes won the second game 4-3, and they got into regionals because of that, and then they made it into the Women's College World Series because of wins at regionals. So Charmel Green, who all of you have seen her. I don't know how many of you know Charmel. Charmel is on the sidelines all the time. Charmel was a member of this team. She holds the NCAA record for most hits in a single game. She had 7 hits. And Coach told us in 14 at-bats in that first game. And she's obviously still part of Utah Athletics today.
Yeah,
so.
Chief Operating Officer for Utah Athletics, Deputy Athletic Director. If I'm not mistaken, she's like the number 2 to Mark Harlan right now, or she's at least in the top echelon of the Utah Athletic Department.
Can you imagine getting 14 at-bats in one game? 4 players on the Utah team had 14 at-bats, and everyone else had 13 at-bats in that game, that first game. And then they're just like, okay, have an orange slice. We're going to go play another 25-inning game.
Sip some not sip, chug some Gatorade. Let's get back out there, which, by the way, that is the thing when you said to Coach Amy Hogue just now, there's got to be rules against playing that much in a 12-hour period. The middle break is the big thing. That's like, there's no way they would move that to the next day.
100%. That game gets postponed to the next day, and it would be an evening game the next day.
Yeah.
How about the fact that Creighton's pitcher, again, according to Coach, went 51 of the 56 innings? Shout
out to her.
Your arm would fall off.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Anyway, that needs to be like a 30 for 30. I want there to be a bet, like a mini doc at the very least on that doubleheader. That is insanity. I want to be invited to the reunion when the Creighton players and the Utah players go and they tell their stories. Because think, the trainer, she said the athletic trainer passed out. Like
the one in charge of keeping the kids so that they don't pass out and have bad injuries. Bad health scares or whatever. She had kind of a health scare, or he did, whoever it was.
Imagine you're like, okay, We're gonna play this. We're gonna play this very important WAC championship game. All right, WAC championship doubleheader if we have to. It's 6 p.m. We'll be out of here at midnight. Nope.
7-inning games, by the way, softball. So you're really thinking, oh yeah, we'll definitely be out of here before midnight because I mean that's 2 innings less than a baseball game. So these are short. These are shorter games. They're not. They really aren't used to playing, hours long games, more than a couple hours.
Well done, James, getting Amy Hogue on.
Yeah, shout out to her for being willing and for spending the time. She mentioned she is actively recruiting right now. So that coach is busy. We appreciate her giving us about a half hour of her time.
Now my fellow Utah Athletics Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to half jokingly welcome her into the Hall of Fame, OC. Yes. I don't know why you didn't do that.
Well, what's really funny is she said she thinks all the teammates will show up for the reunion. The 04 team, most of the good players on the team didn't show up for the reunion. The reunion was like us. It was like the backups, the walk-ons. The guys who are local still that were good players on that team, they showed up. But there weren't like a ton of people who flew in to be part of the festivities.
Well, you think about Alex Smith and Eric Weddle were both still playing in the league.
Well, yeah, that they have a past. They have an excuse.
Yeah, it was recent enough they were still their careers were still going on. So you got a lot of that going on. That's obviously not the case with the 91.
Well, not a lot of that going on. There was only like 3 guys from the team still in the league.
So a few then. Yeah.
So they get a pass. No one expects them to I'm not going to show up to walk through because I'm going to this dinner.
I'm going to the Hall of Fame.
But and Morgan was on the staff, obviously, and Sione Puel.
He had to be there.
Sione Puel was on the staff.
Had to be there. Didn't want to be there. They just had to be. No, just kidding.
But there were a lot of guys that just weren't there. Really good, important players on the team. And you're just like, why didn't you show up?
Urban still coaching.
Urban was there.
Or was he there? Okay,
yeah, he wasn't coaching.
He was just left Ohio State maybe in that time.
Yeah, Urban was there, but we had a good laugh about it with all the guys that were just like let's say 50 guys showed up, 30 were people who had 0 stats on the team. I'm just like, all right, cool. I guess we're all living in the glory days, and the guys who actually played were just like, no, I lived that. I had fun. My memories are elsewhere. So anyway, we went way over time with Amy Hogue. Big thanks to her for joining us. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Now's the time to help Utah kids start school with confidence and style. 200 kids at the road home need your help with back-to-school clothes, shoes, backpacks, and more. Utah's number one sports talk invites you to be a child's advocate. Go to ESPN700sports.com or AppleTreeForKids.com. Find more information and donate now. It's a really good opportunity for us to help out other kids who are – they're going to be back in school. They're going to be in school with your kids, right? If you can afford to, help them get another pair of shoes. Help them get a cooler backpack. Help them – when the families are maybe on some hard times, help them not feel it as students. Those school-age kids shouldn't have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Maybe rummage through closest DI or Goodwill or Savers and look and get them that incredibly priceless piece of memorabilia that's hidden there.
Please do not let them go to school in the Wilt Chamberlain game-worn jersey, all right? We're going to be giving away tickets here in about, we'll say, 8 minutes. Ann Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, coming to a big screen near you, the end of Oak Street, August 14th. We want to send you early. 14th is when the movie comes out. The 10th is when we're doing our advanced screening. 4-pack of tickets with a trivia answer coming up here shortly. More details are available at ESPN700sports.com. I asked a question earlier in the show, what is a change you want to see happen for Utah football this year? Morgan Scalley has a bit of a blank slate. The identity is going to have a lot of similarities. RSNB, relentless, smart, nasty ball hawks. He wants people running to the ball. He wants aggression. He wants intelligence. That means before and after the play, not as much trash talk, whatever. Right? What do I want to see? What's something that I want to see? There was a time where Utah football was among the very best special teams squads in the nation. And we kind of laughed about it. We kind of joked about it sometimes where your only All-American was a punter. Your only All-American was a kicker, right? And it was kind of like a dubious honor to have. But then even in the championship years, the Pac-12 championship years, like special teams for whatever reason kind of fell off a little bit. I want Utah to get that advantage back because it was a serious advantage. And one of my hottest Utah football takes, and something that people either agree with wholeheartedly, but most of them argue against me, I will die on the hill of if your kickoff team was better, you win the Rose Bowl against Ohio State. If Ohio State's starting field position was not half, like 50-yard line or better, or near the 50-yard line every single drive, then even Mekhi Bernard at corner and fatigue in that game and whatever else played into it, you end up winning that game. It drove me absolutely insane that there was too much meat on the bone, and all we talked about after that game was, the fact that you had to play against the backups of an All-American wide receiver room, and they ended up being just as good, if not better, than the guys that were replaced. And then you talked about Cam Rising getting knocked out, literally, in that game. And then you talked about Bryson Barnes coming in and still leading a drive and winning. For me, one of the key aspects of that game, and I hate to bring up old stuff, but I also kind of love to bring up old stuff. You know this about me. If Utah football can get back to being an elite special teams squad, it gives you a bit of an out on maybe not having an elite offensive line for a couple of games, or maybe not having a perfect pass rush for a couple of games. Starting field position, especially now in college sports, matters so much for opponent play calling, for momentum in games and things like that. I don't know what happened to Utah special teams, but that was one of the blind spots of the latter part of Kyle Whittingham's Utah career. It was maybe the only regression that he had. Offense got a lot better. Special teams got a lot worse. And I don't need a Ray Guy Award winner as your punter. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your kick coverage teams. I'm talking about your return teams.
And then there was also a lot of, speaking of punting and kicking, there was a lot more of like, oh, that used to be a chip shot field goal for us. And we're not talking. I'm not talking about Sam Gay 55-yard, 60-yard range. I'm talking about
Matt Gay.
Sorry, Matt Gay. I don't know why I said Sam Gay. Matt Gay. I'm talking about between 40 and 50 yards. There was a lot more of like, oh, we're missing those field goals now. There was a lot more. The punters are like, oh, they're shanking it a lot more. It's a lot shorter punt. You're right. The kick coverage is probably the most important of all that, but also some of the other stuff fell off. I'll ask you this. Jay Hill was the special teams coordinator for a long time, if I'm not mistaken. He left to take the Weber State head coaching job in 2014. I wonder if, and this is no shot at Sharif Shaw, who's taken over, who's now the special teams coordinator, was for a long time after Jay Hill. But I wonder if Jay Hill was just so elite at that him moving on to take head coaching job and defensive coordinators jobs now had a bigger effect on that sort of thing than maybe realized he might.
I actually would really like to get into the weeds on it because, look, it's possible that Sharif Shaw is maybe not the problem, but also not an ultimate solution. It's possible that he outsourced too much of it because there was, like, one thing about this coaching staff, in order to retain coaches, right? You gave people a lot of responsibilities. You gave people a lot of, like, titles. You know what I mean? So it's like,
make sure they feel important, make sure they have a big role that makes them feel like, they're investing in me here, kind of thing.
So even while Sharif has been special teams coordinator, there were times where he was not in charge of the kick coverage units. He was not in charge, like he was outsourcing some of that. Maybe that's a benefit, maybe it's a problem. I truly don't know. I think maybe a bigger thing for me is there was a time, it felt like, where there was a pretty distinct line between the types of players who were playing on your special teams. Starters were not doing it, right? For the most part, you did not have your starting linebacker, your starting safety, your starting corner running down on a coverage team. And there's multiple reasons for that. Injury risk is one. Also, no every down starter takes his special teams duties as seriously as he's supposed to. They just don't. Okay? There's very rare exception to this.
Bigger fish to fry mentality,
like, Cam Scadaboo played every special team for Arizona State when he was down there.
Such a maniac, though.
But
that's so rare.
I think it's just because Cam Scadaboo, his brain only works for football.
Yeah.
So anytime he's playing football 1,000%. I think that he can't read probably. And football is just like the thing that he does, right? So maybe he was an outlier, someone who could do that, right? Like maybe Taysom Hill, you can give him special teams duties because that's what he is. And there's been guys at Utah that did, like Chase Hansen played great on special teams coverage before he was an every down starter and even after he was an every down starter. But I think that's part of it. And you always hear me advocating for like the underdog, the walk-on, the backup kid. That is where you cut your teeth, and that is how you get onto the field. It just is. And it always was. And I think that there's been some departure from that in certain years where maybe the guy who would be best at it wasn't given the opportunity because, well, now your starter's getting paid, so milk as much production out of him as you can. Well, he doesn't run quite as fast a 40 as the starter, so don't put him out there on kickoff because he's not going to get there as fast. And there's not enough nuance to the opinion like this is his Super Bowl every game. The starter, runs a lot faster, but he's not running a lot faster on kickoff because he's worried about keeping a little gas in the tank for when he's, playing as a starting defensive player. I really don't know the exact, and I know that they've taken a look at it in every different angle, so they probably would be laughing at me for asking these questions, but I really want to know because there was a time where you knew you were going to pin an opponent back. If you were punting, like, dang it, we didn't get our first down. They're not going to have good field position, though. And even on kickoff, it's like we're either kicking it out of the back of the end zone or failing that, we're going to make the damn tackle. And I'll tell you, Urban Meyer had a lot of flaws as a human. As a coach, though, he was fanatic about discipline on special teams and about the importance of special teams and he passed that on, and it was part of the thing for Utah football, and then it kind of got lost, and I don't know why. I want it back under Morgan Scalley, and I think we will have a greater emphasis on it with Morgan Scalley, and I think part of it is making sure it's the right players on special teams. Anyway, 877-353-0700. Let me know the thing that you need Utah football to have that maybe they didn't last year. And they were a really good team last year. Really good. But sometimes good is the enemy of great. And this is a good example for me. You can be an awesome defense, an awesome offense, but if you have a liability in special teams, if you're turning the ball over in special teams, or if you're giving up field position, now your great offense and your great defense are at a disadvantage because of that third phase. We got to take one more break. We're going to give away some tickets to the End of Oak Street, a screening, an advanced screening on August 10th. 877-353-0700. I'll ask a trivia question. We'll talk to Spence Checketts. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Eight seven seven 353 for a sneak preview 4-pack to the End of Oak Street, which comes out on the 14th of August. We will have our advanced screening on the 10th of August. Gordy Chiesa joined us earlier, and he talked about his list was of the players who had scored 20 points or more in their career. And the list, I mean, LeBron's going to eclipse 1,000 games. He's number one on the list. He's going to eclipse 1,000 games with more than 20 points scored in his NBA career, which is just insane. Where did Karl Malone rank of the players all-time, number of games scoring 20 or more points? 877-353-0700. Where did the iconic jazz man Karl Malone rank on Gordy's list? 877-353-0700. If you have the answer, you'll get a 4-pack of tickets to the End of Oak Street, starring Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor, coming to a big screen near you. ESPN700sports.com for more details. Something we did not have enough time to really get to today, but we did talk about the memorabilia, the great find of a Wilt Chamberlain game-worn warm-up jacket that was then flipped after thrifting for $3.07 for $89,600 at auction. You're not going to get the same return on investment no matter how long you keep a Field of Dreams game jersey. The Twins and the Phillies are playing in Dyersville at the Field of Dreams game this year. I've been to the Field of Dreams in Dyersville before it was a big modern mega sports complex. It's a cool little spot. And now it's even cooler because it is a big modern mega sports complex. I think it's great that they do Major League Baseball games there in the cornfields. I think it's wonderful. It's a great, baseball should, more than anything else, lean into its pop culture, lean into its traditions and things like that. What do you think a Twins or Phillies Field of Dreams game jersey, the official jersey, not the game-worn ones, but the fan ones, what do you think that'll run you from Fanatics this year, James? Special edition jersey. It's not like limited, though. They're just doing a huge run of these things.
Yeah.
But it's got the Field of Dreams patch on it. It's a throwback pinstripe for the Twins. The Phillies just looks like every other ugly Phillies uniform to me. But what do you
Phillies
think?
hater.
What do you think it'll run you? And it's the nice one. It's not the screen printed. It's the tackle twill.
Right. It's got to be couple hundred more than a regular jersey. I'm going to say at least $600.
It's $420.
Okay. Still a lot of money.
What are we doing? Like, you want fans to buy a $420 shirt?
Yeah.
Knock it off.
Cool.
I'm all on board with.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you want an authentic NHL hockey sweater? That's about $200, right? That's expensive. They go up to $300. That's expensive. The Winter Classic ones, they're probably going to be $400, $500. My little nephew's going to want one, and I'm that uncle. I'm going to have to get him one, and it's going to drive me insane. But stop it. One game, $420 for a baseball jersey? Shut up, Fanatics. Crosstalk brought to you by our friends at Advanced Window Products. 801-850-9100 for $2,500 off 10 windows or more. Hi, Spence.
Don't you know about a website where you can get all these things for like $5?
I do.
Okay. I see what we're doing. We're complaining about it publicly and putting the message out there that you're getting the actual jersey, and then you're going to pay the $5 for the jersey, but no one knows the difference.
It's more like 30. Okay, I'm not. It's
okay. Well, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Honestly, this underscores a bigger point where I was kind of following the secondary market for the World Cup tickets.
Yeah.
So I have a screenshot of the stadium, the seat chart for the final 2 hours before it kicked off, and tickets were still going for like $10,000.
Yeah.
Like upper level. My question is, where are people getting all of this money to do all of these things?
There was a bunch of social media accounts that were just like college-age kids standing there with a microphone and going, "You going to the World Cup final?" as people are walking in to the World Cup final. Like, yeah. How much did you spend on your tickets? And the answers were anywhere from $10,000 to like $80,000 for their tickets. And then the next question would be like, what do you do for a living? And with rare exception, it was like, I own my own company. I'm a lawyer. Like, I inherited this money, whatever. And then there's like one person who's laughing and just like, oh, I drive a garbage truck and I probably shouldn't have bought this. And you're just like, okay, I'm on that guy's level. But yeah, I mean, pricing fans out of sport hasn't happened yet, which is odd because you look at it and you see some of these numbers and you're just like, no one can do this. But then they're sold out.
Yeah.
So obviously some people can do it. If it keeps increasing the way it is, if the greed keeps increasing the way it has, then at some point we are going to reach this point of no return where everyone's just like, I'll watch it on TV.
And so many people are there anyway. You know, I prefer watching games at home. I'll tell you that much. But it wasn't just the World Cup. I remember like trying to get to MSG for the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
And The Athletic did this piece where one of their writers followed some people and interviewed some people in the upper deck. And they were like, yeah, I took on $18,000 of credit card debt to go to a basketball game. It's It's like, well, what's your APR? Like 15% on the low end? It's probably closer to 28 or 30.
30 usually, yeah.
So you're paying a 30% markup for a basketball game. And yes, maybe it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing if you're a Knicks fan, but I don't know, man. It turns into the same old debate about capitalism and supply and demand. And to your point, people are still going. But I'm watching the World Cup final. I'm like, there are a lot of people that traveled from other countries, right, and like made this trek. Are you saving your entire life? Did you sell? Did you take a second mortgage out? Are you literally putting it on a credit card? It's just wild to consider the financial ramifications of just wanting to have an experience, maybe with your daughter and son.
I wonder if you're like from Cape Verde, if you can, for the World Cup, you can get an American credit card and just like
and then just bounce.
Just bounce. There's like good luck collecting. There's no extradition
I live in
agreement.
Cape Verde. Good luck.
Yeah, like have fun collecting this money.
Yeah.
Because in that case, whatever. But
look, the reality of the business of sport is ticket prices go up every year. They're gonna and with private equity involved in certain properties here locally that shall remain nameless, those tickets might go up even more than you're expecting. And look, the only way to curtail this is to inspire some sort of massive movement where you just say, no, we're not going anymore. But the wait list for season tickets at Utah football is pretty long. And so you say no, someone else is ready to say yes, and then you're on a waiting list again for another 10 years. Tough deal.
Yeah, it is a tough deal. You ever been to a thrift store?
Oh, yeah. Dollar store?
You ever found, no, not a dollar store, like a used, like a DI?
Yeah.
Goodwill.
Uh-huh.
You ever found a Wilt Chamberlain game-worn
warm-up
jacket?
I will tell you what, as a result of some spring cleaning I did once upon a time, there are several people downtown that may not live in a home that have a bunch of RSL polos, a bunch of like old school jazz polos. I gave away, because in this business, you get a lot of free gear.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry if that sounds a certain way, but if you don't start moving on from it, I've been doing this 20 years. I had boxes full of like RSL 2009 MLS Cup champion T-shirts. So the answer is no. I don't make a hobby of going to thrift shops and looking around to try to find sports paraphernalia, but I did see that, and it's worth what?
It was $90,000. He sold it for $89,600.
Good for him.
Bought it for $307.
It was that expensive at a thrift store?
It was $3.07.
Oh, I was thinking $307.
No, $3.07 for a game-worn NBA Finals Wilt Chamberlain warm-up jacket.
Maybe that's a good ROI. Maybe we need to start making a hobby of heading down to thrift stores.
That's a 3,000,000% ROI.
Not bad. Yeah, there might be a pair of Andy Williams shorts at your local DI if you want to head downtown right now.
All right. Thanks, everyone who listened today. James, you didn't Ryan Clark me on the show, so I'm going to count it as a success.
By the way,
stay tuned.
Let me ask you, because we were talking. I actually asked Bill. I had Bill on the show yesterday when the news was breaking. Bill was called off a road trip while he was calling a basketball game to be fired. What's the weirdest way you've ever lost a job? Is there one thing that comes to mind? Oh, you know what? We can go to break. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I might be sitting in the same seat.
I heard what I said out loud. I'm realizing the question I asked.
Stay tuned for the Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening.